The day my own son raised his right hand in court
I swear to tell the truth,
and
the whole
swore to
truth,
tell the truth,
and nothing but the truth, so
I
help me
still
God.
believed there was one lie he would never dare to tell.
I didn't do it.
I was wrong.
I swear on
Daniel
everything I love,
Ashford
I was
looked
nowhere
the
near
judge
the
in the
scene
eye
when the
and
incident
claimed
took
I
place.
had willingly signed away my
Your
home
Honor,
because I
this
trusted
email
him
from July
completely.
12th proves our case.
The courtroom believed every word until my attorney quietly opened an old
This email,
no one knew still
Exhibit
existed.
A, proves
In
the
a matter of
defendant
seconds,
knew about the
son I had
transaction
spent my
before the
entire
date
life
in
protecting
question.
watched his perfect case begin to collapse. If this story touches something in your heart, I'd love for you to stay with me until the end. Please, like this video if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, and subscribe if stories about truth and second chances speak to you. I'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Your comments always remind me that none of us are truly alone. I used to think pride was a warm thing, the kind of feeling that filled your chest when your child walked across a graduation stage or called you after passing the bar exam or bought his first suit with trembling hands and said, "Mom, do I look like a real lawyer now?" For most of my life, Daniel Ashford was that kind of pride to me. He was my oldest child, my first baby, the boy who used to fall asleep on my lap while I folded laundry after working a double shift at Riverside Methodist Hospital. Back then, I was not anyone important. I was just Martin Ashford, a tired wife, a mother of two, and a woman who believed that if I sacrificed enough, my children would never have to live with the worries that kept me awake at night. My husband William used to say, "You're going to wear yourself down to bone for those kids." And I would always answer, "Then they better make something good out of these bones." Daniel did. At least I thought he did. He was smart from the beginning. Not just school smart, but polished smart. The kind of child adults noticed. He knew when to smile, when to be quiet, when to say the exact thing people wanted to hear. His teachers called him gifted. His Sunday school leader called him mature. Neighbors said, "That boy is going places." Emily, my younger daughter, was different. Softer, quieter, more watchful. She noticed things Daniel did not think mattered. If Daniel brought home straight A's, Emily noticed the classmate sitting alone at lunch. If Daniel won a debate trophy, Emily noticed the boy who lost and cried behind the gym. I love them both, but I will admit something now that still hurts to say. Daniel was the one I showed off. When he got accepted into law school, I cried so hard I had to sit down at the kitchen table. William opened a bottle of cheap sparkling cider because we could not afford champagne. Daniel laughed and said, "One day, Mom, I'll buy you the real thing." I believed him. Law school was expensive. Even with loans and scholarships, there were gaps, big ones. So I sold my mother's pearl earrings. I picked up overnight shifts. William delayed repairing his truck. We stopped taking vacations. I clipped coupons until the newspaper ink stained my fingers. Daniel knew some of it, not all of it. A mother hides the worst parts of sacrifice because she does not want her child to feel guilty for receiving love. When he graduated, he hugged me in front of everyone and whispered, "Everything I am is because of you." For years, that sentence lived inside me like a candle. After William died, that candle became even more precious. Losing my husband was like waking up in a house where every room had lost its sound. His boots were still by the garage door. His reading glasses sat on the side table. His old coffee mug stayed in the cabinet, the one with the chipped blue handle. I could not move it. I could barely touch it. Daniel stepped in quickly. At first, I thought it was love. He came by every Sunday after church. He checked the smoke detectors. He carried salt bags to the basement when winter came. He brought soup when I had a cold. He sat with me at the kitchen table and asked about my bills, my prescriptions, my insurance. "You shouldn't have to handle all this alone," he told me. And because grief had made me tired in places I did not know could get tired, I let him help. People noticed. At church, Mrs. Henderson squeezed my hand and said, "You raised a good son, Martin." Across the street, Mr. Wallace once watched Daniel clean my gutters and called out, "Wish my boys were like that." Daniel smiled, waved, and climbed down the ladder like a man who knew exactly how he looked from the sidewalk. That should have been the first thing I noticed, how often his kindness had an audience. But I did not want to be suspicious of my own child. No mother wants that. We would rather explain away the little chill in our stomach than admit the person we trust most may be standing too close to what we own. Emily noticed before I did. One afternoon, she came over while Daniel was in my living room sorting through a stack of papers. He had taken off his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, looking every inch the responsible son. There were bank statements on the coffee table, insurance letters, property tax notices, and a yellow legal pad full of notes. Emily paused in the doorway. "What's all this?" she asked. Daniel did not even look up. "Helping Mom organize. I thought Mom already had a filing cabinet." "She does," he said smoothly, "but it's a mess." I laughed because I wanted the room to stay light. "It is a mess." Emily looked at me, then at him. "Are these originals?" Daniel finally looked up. His smile stayed, but something behind it tightened. "Some of them. Shouldn't Mom keep them?" "She is keeping them. I'm just making copies." Emily walked closer and picked up one envelope. "County property tax." Daniel reached out and took it from her gently, almost politely. "Emily, I do this for a living. I know what you do." "Then you know I'm qualified to help our mother." Daniel reached out and took it from her gently, almost politely. "Emily, I do this for a living. I know what you do. Then you know I'm qualified to help our mother." The words were calm. The room was not. I remember feeling embarrassed, as if Emily had accused him of something shameful in my home. So I said, "Sweetheart, your brother is only trying to make things easier for me." Emily's face softened when she looked at me. "I know, Mom," she said. "I just want you to understand everything before you let anyone handle it." Daniel laughed lightly. "Anyone, I'm her son." Emily did not laugh back. That night, after Daniel left, she stayed behind and helped me wash the dinner plates. The kitchen window had gone dark, and I could see our reflections in the glass, me older than I felt. Emily worried in a way I wanted to dismiss. "Mom," she said quietly, "Daniel asks a lot about the house." I rinsed a plate. "Because the house is the biggest thing I have. That's exactly why I'm saying it." I set the plate in the rack a little harder than I meant to. "Your brother is a lawyer. He understands these things. Lawyers can still want things." I turned to her then. She looked sorry before I even answered. "Emily, I said your father and I raised Daniel. He is not some stranger circling my property. I didn't say he was. You implied it." She dried her hands slowly. "No. I'm saying sometimes people can love you and still believe they're entitled to what belongs to you." That sentence stayed with me for years. Not because I believed it, because I refused to. The truth is, I needed Daniel to be good. After William died, I needed the world to still make sense. I needed to believe that the son I had worked myself half to death for would never look at my grief and see an opportunity. So when Daniel called me every morning, I answered. When he told me not to worry about confusing mail, I thanked him. When he said, "Mom, I'll protect the house Dad left you," I believed every word. Maybe that was my weakness. Not old age, not confusion, not loneliness. Love. Love made me hand him envelopes without counting them. Love made me sign birthday cards with checks inside long after he earned more in a month than I had earned in half a year. Love made me smile when he corrected me in front of others and told myself he was only being helpful. And Daniel knew that. He knew exactly which tone to use. He never demanded at first. He suggested. He reassured. He kissed my forehead. He called me Mama when he wanted me soft. The first time he mentioned estate planning, we were sitting on my back porch in early spring. The tulips William had planted years before were starting to push through the soil. Daniel brought coffee from the shop downtown, the expensive kind I never bought for myself. He looked out over the yard and said, "Dad would want this place protected." I felt my throat tighten. Yes, he would. Daniel reached over and covered my hand with his. "Then let me help you do that." I looked at my son, my successful son, my polished son, my son who knew the law better than anyone I trusted. And I said yes. I did not know that single word would one day lead me to a courtroom, watching him swear under oath to a lie that nearly stole everything William and I had built. The first papers Daniel brought me did not look dangerous. That is something I have thought about many times since then. Dangerous things do not always arrive with shouting threats or slammed doors. Sometimes they arrive in a neat leather folder carried by your son in a pressed navy suit with your favorite coffee in one hand and a kiss on your cheek. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Daniel came by with the folder. I remember because Tuesdays were the days I used to go to the grocery store early before the aisles filled with young mothers and impatient men grabbing frozen dinners after work. I had just come home with 2 bags of groceries and a small bouquet of yellow tulips I bought for myself. Because William used to say, yellow flowers made the kitchen look alive. Daniel was already waiting on the porch. "Mama," he said, standing up from the white rocking chair you should have called me. I would have carried those in. I can still carry lettuce and bread, Daniel. I know you can. He took both bags anyway. But you shouldn't have to. That was how he always did it. He made control sound like tenderness. Inside, he unpacked the groceries while I put the tulips in water. He moved comfortably through my kitchen opening cabinets, checking expiration dates, tossing out a jar of mustard I had not used in months. "You don't need to clean out my refrigerator every time you come over," I said. "I'm not cleaning it out. I'm protecting you from poisoning yourself." I laughed because he smiled when he said it. Then he placed the leather folder on the kitchen table. That folder changed the air in the room. "What's that?" I asked. "Nothing scary," he said quickly. "Just some estate planning documents." I wiped my hands on a dish towel. Estate planning. "Mom, we talked about this. We talked about protecting the house. That's what this is." He pulled out a chair for me, then sat across from me like a lawyer meeting a client. I noticed the difference, but I told myself I was imagining it. He took out a pen, a yellow legal pad, and several pages clipped together with bright blue tabs. "I want to make sure everything Dad worked for stays safe," he said. The moment he mentioned William, my guard softened. Daniel knew that. "What exactly does that mean?" I asked. "It means avoiding probate headaches. It means making sure nobody can challenge your wishes later. It means if something happens, Emily and I won't be stuck fighting banks, courts, and paperwork while grieving. I don't plan on dying anytime soon." His expression changed immediately. "Mom, don't say that. I'm serious. So am I." He reached across the table and touched my hand. "This isn't about death. It's about peace of mind. Peace of mind." That phrase sounded so gentle. He began explaining things I half understood. Living trust, durable power of attorney, healthcare directive, beneficiary updates, property protection, probate avoidance. He spoke with patience at first, but every word seemed to come wrapped in more words. I tried to follow. I really did. But legal language has a way of making an ordinary person feel smaller. By the 3rd page, my eyes were moving over sentences without taking them in. I saw words like grantor trustee, conveyance, authorization, incapacity, successor transfer. They sounded official, not personal. "This one lets me help with bills if you're sick. Daniel said, tapping a page. All right, this one makes sure your medical wishes are respected. That sounds good. This one helps keep the house from getting tied up in court. I looked up. Tied up how? Probate, delays, taxes, claims. You don't want that. No, I suppose not. You trust me, don't you? The question landed softly, but something inside me stiffened. Of course I trust you. Then let me handle the complicated part. Before I could answer, the front door opened. Mom, Emily called. She had a key just like Daniel did. She came in carrying a canvas tote bag and a covered dish. I made chicken casserole. Don't pretend you're not tired of soup. Then she saw the papers. Her smile faded. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Afternoon, Em. What are you doing? Helping Mom with estate planning. Emily set the casserole on the counter slowly. Today, Daniel gave a small laugh. Yes, today. Is that a problem? No. I just didn't know Mom had an appointment. It isn't an appointment. I'm her son. Emily walked to the table and looked down at the pages. Can I see Daniel placed his hand over the top sheet? It was such a small movement, but Emily noticed. So did I. These are legal documents, he said. I know what legal documents look like. Then you know they're private. She's my mother too, and I'm the attorney helping her. You're also the person who benefits from whatever she signs. The silence after that was sharp enough to cut skin. I felt heat rise in my face. Emily? She looked at me, and her voice softened. Mom? I'm not accusing anyone. I just think you should have an independent attorney review this. Daniel's eyes narrowed, but his voice stayed calm. That's unnecessary. Why? Because it costs money. She doesn't need to spend. You'll pay for it. He laughed again, but there was no warmth in it. You're a high school teacher, Emily. Don't act like you have money to throw around because you watched one documentary about elder fraud. I flinched at the word elder. Emily did not. Why are you angry? She asked. I'm not angry. I'm offended. There's a difference. You won't even let me look at the pages. Because you're not a lawyer. Neither is Mom. That one hurt me, though it was true. I pushed back my chair. Enough, both of you. Daniel immediately turned tender again. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't come here to upset you. Emily crossed her arms. Then leave the papers with her. Let her read them slowly. Daniel looked at me. Mom, these forms are time-sensitive. How time-sensitive? Emily asked. They need to be notarized before the end of the week if we want the filing done correctly. Why? Because some property tax deadlines are coming up. Emily frowned. Property tax deadlines don't require signing estate documents by Friday. Daniel stood. I am not going to argue law with you in Mom's kitchen. I wanted the fight to stop. More than I wanted answers, more than I wanted clarity, I wanted my children to stop looking at each other like strangers. So I said the words Daniel needed. Emily, honey, your brother knows what he's doing. Knows. She looked at me as if I had stepped too close to the edge of something she could see, and I could not. Mom, she said quietly, knowing what he's doing is exactly what scares me. Daniel gathered the pages and straightened them against the table. He'll come back Thursday, he said. Well, go over everything slowly, just you and me. Emily's eyes moved to the documents. Leave copies. I'll email them. You said Mom doesn't use email much. She has access. Emily reached for her phone. Then I'll take pictures so she can enlarge them and read them. Daniel's hand came down over the pages again. Do not photograph my legal work product. My mother is being asked to sign it. She hasn't signed anything yet. Then there should be no problem. For 1 second, I saw something in Daniel's face I had never seen before. Not anger. Calculation. Then he smiled. "Fine," he said. "Take pictures of the general forms if that makes you feel better, but not the signature pages. Those have personal information." Emily did not argue. She simply lifted her phone and photographed several pages before Daniel could change his mind. At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Later, those blurry pictures would become the first small crack in Daniel's perfect wall. After Emily left, Daniel stayed behind. He helped me put the casserole in the refrigerator. He watered the tulips. He stood at the sink and looked out into the backyard where William's old bird feeder swung in the breeze. "I hate that she thinks I'd hurt you," he said. "She doesn't think that." The sink and looked out into the backyard where William's old bird feeder swung in the breeze. "I hate that she thinks I'd hurt you," he said. "She doesn't think that. She does." His voice broke just enough to make me turn. After everything I've tried to do for this family, I went to him. A mother's instinct is a dangerous thing when someone knows how to use it. I touched his arm. "Daniel, Emily worries. That's all. She resents me." "No, she doesn't. She thinks because I became successful, I must be greedy." I shook my head. "You are not greedy." He looked at me then, and his eyes were wet. "Dad trusted me, didn't he?" The question pierced me. "Of course he did." "And you trust me?" "Yes." He nodded like my answer had settled something. On Thursday, he returned with the folder again. This time, Emily was not there. He explained the documents more slowly, just as he promised. He pointed where I should initial. He paused when I asked questions. He told me certain sections were standard language. He said the house would remain protected. He said nothing would change in my daily life. "No one is taking anything from you," he said. I remember that sentence most of all. No one is taking anything from you. So I signed. Not every page that day, not all at once, but enough. Enough to begin the chain. Enough for Daniel to leave my house with papers in his briefcase and a smile on his face. At the door, he kissed my forehead. "You did the right thing, Mama." I watched him walk to his car, the leather folder tucked under his arm. And for the first time, standing alone in my doorway, I wondered why doing the right thing had made my stomach feel so cold. After Daniel left with those signed papers, nothing changed right away. That was part of what made it so easy to ignore the warning in my stomach. The next morning, I still woke up in my own bed. The sunlight still came through the lace curtains William had insisted were too fancy for our bedroom. The old maple tree still brushed against the upstairs window when the wind moved. My coffee still tasted too bitter because I always forgot to stop brewing it before it burned. My life looked the same. That is how control begins sometimes. Not with a door slamming shut, but with one small thing being moved out of your reach. The first thing Daniel took over was my mail. He did not call it taking over. He called it organizing. "Mom, half your important notices get buried under grocery ads," he said one Sunday afternoon, standing by the little table near my front door, where I always dropped envelopes. "They do not." He lifted a stack of coupons, church newsletters, Medicare notices, and charity requests. "You sure about that?" I smiled because he made it sound harmless. A week later, he brought me a new file box from Office Depot. It was gray plastic and labeled with neat white stickers, banking, insurance, medical, property taxes. "This will make life easier," he said. It did at first. Whenever a bill came, I put it in the box. Whenever a bank statement arrived, I tucked it into the proper slot. Daniel came by every few days and reviewed things. He would sit at my kitchen table with his reading glasses low on his nose, making notes like I was a client instead of his mother. Then the mail started arriving already opened. The first time I noticed, I was holding a letter from my bank. The envelope flap had been carefully slit. Daniel, I said, when he stopped by that evening, did you open this? He glanced at it. Probably. It looked important. It was addressed to me. I know. That's why I checked it for you. The words were so smooth that I almost let them pass. Almost. I can open my own mail. He looked up from his phone and his expression softened in that practiced way of his. Mama? No one said you can't. But you did. I'm just trying to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. I did not answer. He sighed, crossed the kitchen, and kissed the top of my head. I'm sorry. I should have asked. I forget sometimes because I'm used to handling paperwork all day. That apology should have settled me. Instead, it made me feel childish for being upset. After that, I began to notice fewer statements coming to the house. My bank envelopes did not pile up the way they used to. The quarterly retirement account notice never appeared. A letter from my homeowner's insurance company came late, then none came at all. When I asked Daniel, he said, I switched you to electronic notices. Safer that way. I don't remember agreeing to that. You did, Mom. We talked about it. I stood in the hallway with a laundry basket against my hip, trying to recall the conversation. Maybe we had talked about it. Maybe he had mentioned it while I was stirring soup or looking for my glasses. Daniel had a way of saying something quickly, then later acting as if it had been a full discussion. I don't like everything online, I said. I know, but paper mail is risky. People steal identities from mailboxes all the time. I looked toward the front window where my little black mailbox sat near the porch steps. William had painted our last name on it in white letters years ago. Ashford. The paint was chipped now, but I never touched it because his hand had done it. I've never had a problem, I said. You never had a problem because Dad handled a lot of things before. That hurt. He must have known it would. I went quiet, and Daniel softened again. I didn't mean it that way, he said. I just mean you don't have to carry everything alone anymore. Alone. He used that word whenever he wanted me to remember William was gone. The second thing he took over was my banking. Again, it came wrapped as help. One morning, I could not log into my online account. I had written the password in a little notebook hidden in my dresser drawer, a habit Daniel hated. When the password failed 3 times, I called him. He arrived within an hour. You probably typed it wrong, he said. I typed it exactly. Let me see. He sat down at my computer and reset the password while I stood behind him. His fingers moved fast, too fast for me to follow. He answered the security questions without asking me. That should have startled me more than it did. Daniel, how did you know the name of my first elementary school? You told me years ago. Did I? He smiled. Mom, I remember everything. By the time he was done, he had created what he called a secure password system. He said he would keep a backup in case I forgot. I don't want to be locked out of my own bank account. I told him, you won't be, but a strange thing began happening after that. When I wanted to check my balance, I had to ask him. When I wanted to move money from savings to checking, he said he would do it. When I wanted to pay a plumber for fixing the upstairs sink, he told me to wait until he reviewed the invoice. It seems high, he said. It's my sink, and it's your money, which is why I don't want people taking advantage of you. Those words became his favorite shield, taking advantage of you. He said it about plumbers, about insurance companies, about grocery prices, about charities, about Emily once when she asked if I could help pay for Olivia's school fundraiser instead of sending money through Daniel. Emily uses your soft heart, he told me. That is your sister. I know who she is. His voice was flat when he said it. Emily came over less often after that, not because she wanted to, but because Daniel seemed to appear every time she did. If she arrived with flowers, Daniel arrived with documents. If she called during dinner, Daniel called 5 minutes later. If she asked me a question about money, he somehow knew about it by the next day. Mom, Emily said one evening over the phone, does Daniel have access to your call records? Of course not. Then how did he know I asked you about your property taxes? I had no answer. The third thing he took over was my doctor's. I had slipped in the kitchen one rainy morning. It was nothing dramatic. My sock slid on a wet patch near the sink, and I bumped my hip against the cabinet. I did not even fall all the way down. Still, I mentioned it to Daniel because my hip ached. He insisted on taking me to the doctor. At the appointment, he answered questions before I could. She's been more forgetful lately, he told Dr. Patel. I turned to him. No, I haven't. He gave me a gentle look. Mom, you left the stove burner on twice. Once, and I caught it. Doctor. Patel looked from him to me. Martin, have you noticed any memory changes? Numbered Daniel leaned forward. She misplaces bills. She repeats questions. She gets confused with online banking. My face grew hot. Because you changed the passwords. Dr. Patel's pen paused. Daniel smiled sadly like a man carrying a burden. That's not exactly what happened. I stared at him. It was the first time I understood that Daniel could lie softly. Not big lies, not yet, but little ones placed carefully in front of other people. Little lies that made me look unstable if I defended myself too strongly. Dr. Patel did not diagnose me with anything. He said I seemed alert. He suggested normal follow-up care and told Daniel not to overstep. I should have felt relieved. Daniel was quiet the entire drive home. When we pulled into my driveway, he turned off the engine but did not get out. You embarrassed me today, he said. I looked at him stunned. I embarrassed you. I'm trying to help, and you made me look controlling. Because you were speaking for me. Because you forget things. I do not forget more than any woman my age. He closed his eyes. Mom, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You get defensive. Something inside me shrank. I hated that word. Defensive. It made truth sound like a symptom. After that appointment, family members began calling. My cousin Ruth asked if I was doing okay living alone. I hated that word. Defensive. It made truth sound like a symptom. After that appointment, family members began calling. My cousin Ruth asked if I was doing okay living alone. My nephew Stephen said Daniel had mentioned I was having a hard time keeping up. Even people at church started offering rides I had not requested. At first I was confused. Then I was angry. Then I became afraid. Because I realized Daniel was not only managing my papers, he was managing the story of me. He was turning me from a woman into a concern. From a homeowner into a responsibility. From a mother into a problem that needed solving. One Friday afternoon, I found a folder in my dining room that Daniel must have forgotten. Inside were copies of my bank records, a list of monthly expenses, and a handwritten note in Daniel's sharp, slanted writing. Potential incapacity concerns, missed bills, confusion over passwords, unsafe. Living alone, fall risk. Resistance to help. I read the list 3 times. Resistance to help. That was what he called it. Not independence, not dignity, not a grown woman refusing to be swallowed by her son's ambition. Resistance. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down. For the first time, I did not call Daniel. I called Emily. When she answered, I tried to sound normal, but my voice broke before I finished saying her name. Mom, she said, what happened? I looked down at the folder on my lap. I think I whispered, your brother is trying to make me look like I can't take care of myself. Emily did not gasp. She did not ask if I was sure. She only said very quietly, I know. And that scared me more than anything. The house began changing before anyone admitted it was changing. Not physically, not at first. The same brass lamp still glowed in the front window every evening. William's old recliner still sat by the fireplace with the leather cracked at the arms. My quilts were still folded over the back of the sofa. The little ceramic rooster Emily made in 4th grade still stood on the kitchen shelf, chipped beak and all. But something in the house felt watched, measured, as if every room had quietly stopped belonging to memory and started belonging to paperwork. After I found Daniel's folder with the words, "potential incapacity concerns," I tried to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. That was what I had done my whole life when Daniel unsettled me. I searched for the kindest version of his behavior and held on to it like a railing. Maybe lawyers made notes like that. Maybe he was preparing in case someone else questioned my ability. Maybe I had misunderstood. But then the insurance letter came. It was a thin envelope from my homeowner's insurance company folded between a grocery flyer and a church bulletin. I almost missed it. The envelope was not opened, which surprised me. Daniel must not have seen it yet. I made myself a cup of tea before opening it, as if tea could make legal language less threatening. The letter said there had been a recent update to the insured interest listed on the property. I read the sentence once, then again. Then I reached for the phone. Daniel answered on the 3rd ring. I could hear office noise behind him, low voices, a copier, the distant ring of another phone. "Hey, Mama. Everything okay? I got a letter from the insurance company." There was a pause, just long enough to make my fingers tighten around the receiver. What kind of letter? It says something about an update to the insured interest. "Oh, that." His voice relaxed. "Yes, I handled that. Why?" "Because the policy was outdated. My name is still on it, isn't it?" "Of course." He answered too quickly. "Daniel, Mom, don't get yourself worked up over insurance language. It's administrative. I want to see the full policy. I'll bring it Sunday. I want it now." Another pause. This time, when he spoke, his voice had changed. Not angry, exactly. Patient in a way that made me feel like a child refusing medicine. "Mom, I'm in the middle of work. I can't drop everything because you received a routine notice you don't understand." The words landed harder than a slap. "You don't understand." That was becoming his favorite place to put me, below him. I hung up before he could say anything else. For the next hour, I sat at the kitchen table with that letter in front of me. The tulips on the windowsill had begun to droop their yellow petals curling at the edges. I wanted to call Emily, but I stopped myself. Part of me was ashamed. Ashamed that I had signed papers I did not fully understand. Ashamed that my daughter might have been right. Ashamed that my own son could make me feel foolish in the house I had spent 40 years making into a home. By Sunday, Daniel arrived with Rachel and the girls. That was unusual. Rachel did not visit me often unless there was a holiday or a photograph to be taken. She was a neat, pretty woman with shiny hair, sharp nails, and a talent for complimenting things as if she were already deciding what to replace them with. "Martin," she said, stepping into my living room and looking around, "this place has such good bones." Good bones. People said that about houses before they remodeled them. Olivia ran in first, still young enough to hug me without hesitation. Her little sister Sophie followed more shyly, carrying a tablet. Daniel kissed my cheek and placed a bottle of wine on the counter. "It's barely noon," I said. For later, he replied. Rachel walked toward the fireplace. I always forget how much space this room has. I watched her eyes move from the mantel to the built-in shelves, then to the old wallpaper William and I had chosen in 1998. Her expression was polite, but I could almost hear the walls being painted in her mind. Daniel noticed me watching. "Rachel's been looking at design ideas," he said. "For what?" He smiled. "Just in general." Rachel turned too bright. "Oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I just love older homes. With the right updates, this house could be absolutely stunning. This house is stunning now, I said. Her smile flickered. Of course. During lunch, Daniel acted as if nothing had happened. He carved the rotisserie chicken he had brought from the grocery store and talked about a case at work. Rachel asked if I had ever considered opening up the wall between the kitchen and dining room. No, I said. Oh, you'd get so much more light. I like the wall. Daniel laughed softly. Mom doesn't like change. Emily would have defended me. Rachel only smiled. After lunch, Daniel went to the garage to check the breaker panel. Rachel followed me into the hallway and paused near the stairs. Have you thought about where you'd like to be long-term? She asked. I turned. I am long-term. She blinked. I mean, as things become harder. What things? She lowered her voice, sweet as syrup. Daniel worries. You know how he is. He carries so much. A strange coldness moved through me. Daniel has a home, I said. Yes, but this is his family home. No, I said, looking directly at her. This is my home. For the first time, Rachel looked uncomfortable. Before she could answer, Olivia came skipping down the hallway with a juice box in one hand. Daddy said this room can be my art room one day, she said. Rachel's face went pale. I felt my body go still. What room? I asked. Olivia pointed to William's study. Rachel stepped forward quickly. Sweetheart, Daddy was just joking. Olivia frowned. No, he wasn't. He said, when we live here, I can have the sunny room. The house became silent around that sentence. When we live here, not if. When? Rachel took Olivia by the shoulders and guided her toward the kitchen. Go find your sister. I stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door of William's study. Inside were his books, his fishing cap, the wooden desk he had sanded and stained himself. Daniel had once cried in that room after failing his first driving test. Emily had done homework on the rug. I had sat there with William during the last month of his life reading aloud when his eyes grew tired. And my son had offered it away like a future playroom. That evening, after they left, I went through every drawer where I kept house documents. The deed copy was not where it should have been. Neither were the property tax receipts from the last 3 years. My insurance file was thinner than I remembered. I checked the filing cabinet twice, then the bedroom closet, then the drawer beneath William's old desk. Papers do not simply walk away, but I found myself opening cabinets as if the deed might have wandered into the linen closet among towels. By 10 o'clock, my back ached, and the dining room table was covered in folders. That was when I found the envelope. It had slipped behind the radiator near the front door, maybe dropped there with other mail. The return address read, Franklin County Recorder's Office. My hands began to tremble before I even opened it. Inside was nothing. No letter, no copy, no receipt, just an empty envelope. I stood there, holding it while the clock ticked above the stove. An empty envelope can be louder than a scream when you understand what should have been inside it. I called Daniel. He did not answer. I called Daniel. He did not answer. I called again. This time, he picked up. Mom, it's late. I found an envelope from the county recorder. Silence. Why was the envelope empty, Daniel? He exhaled. I took the document out because I needed to file it. Called again. This time he picked up. Mom, it's late. I found an envelope from the county recorder. Silence. Why was the envelope empty, Daniel? He exhaled. I took the document out because I needed to file it. What document, Mom? What document? His voice hardened. You're getting worked up over nothing. If it was nothing, you would answer me. I am answering you. It was related to the estate planning. Was it about my house? Our house. Mom. The family house. I stopped breathing for a second. He seemed to hear his mistake because he corrected himself quickly. I mean, the house that belongs in the family. No, I whispered. You said our house. Don't twist my words. I looked around the kitchen at the curtains I had sewn, the cabinets William had painted, the floor where my children had once dropped cereal and crayons and school books. My name is still on the deed, isn't it? I asked. Daniel did not answer right away. That was all the answer I needed. Daniel, you signed documents to protect the property. What did I sign? You signed what we discussed. No, I signed what you told me was safe. His voice dropped. Mom, this is why I worry about you. You agree to things, then later you forget and panic. There it was again. Forget. Panic. Old words sharpened into weapons. I hung up because if I stayed on the phone, he would find a way to make me doubt the sound of my own fear. The next morning, Emily came over before school. Her hair was still damp from the shower, and she had coffee in a travel mug. I handed her the empty county envelope. She stared at it. Mom, she said carefully, did Daniel ever show you a recorded transfer deed? I don't know. Her jaw tightened. What does that mean? It means she said we need to find out whether your house is still legally yours. I sat down slowly. Emily reached across the table and took my hand. For the first time since William died, the house did not feel like a shelter. It felt like evidence. My 69th birthday was supposed to be small. That was what I had asked for. No banquet hall, no rented room at church, no dramatic surprise party where people shouted before my heart had time to prepare itself. I wanted pot roast, a lemon cake, my children at the table, and maybe one afternoon where grief did not sit in William's empty chair like an invited guest. Emily understood. She came early that Saturday morning with grocery bags in both arms and flour on the sleeve of her sweater. She had always been of her sweater. She had always been practical with love. Daniel bought expensive gifts. Emily remembered that I liked lemon zest in the frosting and hated paper plate S. Don't you dare lift anything heavy, practical with love. Daniel bought expensive gifts. Emily remembered that I liked lemon zest in the frosting and hated paper plates. Don't you dare lift anything heavy, she said as she carried a Dutch oven to the stove. I have been lifting heavy things since before you were born. And now you have me? I smiled because when Emily said it, it did not feel like control. It felt like company. For a few hours, the house smelled like garlic, rosemary, butter, and cake. The kind of smell that makes old walls remember better days. Emily played Sam Cooke from her phone while she chopped carrots. I set the dining table with my blue-rimmed plates, the ones William had bought me at an estate sale, because I said they looked like something from a movie. At noon, Daniel arrived with Rachel, Olivia, Sophie, and a white bakery box tied with gold string. Emily looked at it. I already made cake. Daniel smiled. Then we'll have two. Rachel kissed the air near my cheek. Happy birthday, Martin. You look wonderful. That was Rachel's way of saying I looked old, but presentable. Daniel handed me a gift bag with tissue paper sticking out of it. Inside was a beige cashmere cardigan. It's lovely, I said, touching the soft sleeve. It'll keep you warm, he said. You're always cold now. I was not always cold, but I thanked him anyway. Family began arriving after that. Cousin Ruth, my nephew Stephen and his wife, a few church friends. Mr. Wallace from across the street came by with a jar of peach preserves. For a while it felt normal. People laughed in the living room. The girls chased each other around the hallway. Someone complimented the pot roast. Someone else told a story about William fixing a lawnmower in the rain. I held on to those moments as tightly as I could. Then Daniel tapped his glass. It was such a small sound, but the room quieted immediately. He stood at the head of the dining table, one hand resting on the back of William's old chair. Not sitting in it, just touching it, claiming it softly before anyone noticed. "I want to say something about my mother," he began. Everyone smiled. I smiled too. At 69, Mom has given this family everything. She and Dad built a beautiful home, raised 2 children, and created a legacy we all cherish. The words were polished. Too polished. I should have recognized that tone. It was not a son speaking from the heart. It was a lawyer beginning an argument. Daniel looked at me, and his eyes glistened. But lately, he continued, those of us closest to her have become concerned. The smile left my face. Emily set down her fork. Daniel kept going. "Mom has had some trouble keeping up with bills, medical appointments, house maintenance, and safety issues. She had a fall recently." "I slipped," I said. Daniel turned toward me gently. "Mom, please, let me finish." The room shifted. I felt it. The soft discomfort of people deciding whether to look at me or look away. He put his hand over his heart. "This is not easy to say, but I believe it's time for us as a family to discuss whether Mom should consider moving somewhere safer. Somewhere with support. Somewhere she won't be alone in this big house." For a moment, I could not speak. The dining room blurred at the edges. My own birthday candles sat unlit on the sideboard. Lemon frosting gleamed under the kitchen light. The blue plates I had carefully chosen suddenly looked foolish, like decorations for my own humiliation. Emily stood first. "No," she said. Daniel sighed. "Emily." "No, you do not get to do this here. I'm trying to have an honest family conversation." At her birthday table, Rachel spoke softly from beside him. "Emily Daniel has been carrying this alone for months." Carrying what Emily snapped. A plan. Ruth pressed a napkin to her mouth. Stephen looked down at his plate. One of my church friends whispered, "Oh dear." I pushed my chair back. "I am not moving into assisted living." Daniel looked pained. "No one is forcing you today." "Today?" "That is not what I meant." "It is exactly what you meant." His voice lowered. "Mom." "This is why I wanted witnesses. Every time I bring up safety, you become emotional." Witnesses. The word hit me like cold water. He had not gathered family to celebrate me. He had gathered an audience. I looked around the room, and suddenly every concerned face felt like a juror's face. My cousin Ruth's pity, Stephen's discomfort, Rachel's controlled sympathy. Even the church friends who had known me for 20 years now looked at me as if I might forget where I was. Daniel pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket pocket. Emily saw it and stepped toward him. "What is that notes?" "For Mom's birthday," she said. He ignored her and began reading. "Missed utility notice in March. Confusion regarding online banking. Open mail left unattended. Possible kitchen safety incident involving stove burner. Documented fall risk. Resistance to recommended support." My breath stopped. Those were the words from the folder. The words I had found in my own dining room. "You wrote a list about me?" I asked. Daniel's expression softened for the crowd. "Mom families keep notes when they're worried." "You are not worried. You are building a case." A murmur moved through the room. Daniel shook his head slowly as if my accusation broke his heart. "Do you hear yourself?" Emily moved beside me. I hear her clearly. Rachel stood then. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "This isn't about taking anything from you, Martin. It's about making sure you're safe. I turned to her. Then why did your daughter say she was getting William's study? Rachel went still. Daniel looked at Olivia. The little girl was sitting halfway under the table with Sophie, both of them frozen now that the adults' voices had changed. That was a misunderstanding, Daniel said. No, I replied. It was a child repeating what she heard. His jaw tightened. Emily looked from Daniel to Rachel. What have you two been telling those girls? No one answered. That silence told the room more than any confession could have. I felt something rise in me then, not strength exactly, but the refusal to disappear politely. This is my home, I said. Your father and I paid for it. We raised you in it. We buried dreams in its walls and built new ones in its rooms. And I will not sit here at my own birthday table while my son describes me like an expired appliance. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Daniel's did not. He only looked embarrassed. Mom, he said, voice tight, you're proving my point. That sentence broke something open in me. For a second, I almost shouted. I almost threw the napkin down and told everyone to leave. But then I saw Ruth watching me, waiting for some display Daniel could use later. I saw Stephen's worried face. I saw Rachel's hand resting near Daniel's arm, ready to comfort him like he was the wounded one. So I sat down slowly. I folded my hands in my lap. And I said as evenly as I could, everyone who came here to celebrate my birthday may stay for cake. Everyone who came here to discuss removing me from my home may leave. The room went dead quiet. Mr. Wallace was the first to stand. He picked up his hat from the side table and looked at Daniel. Your mother said cake. I came for cake. Emily let out a small, shaky laugh. Then Ruth stood too. I'll help light the candles. One by one, the room came back to me. Not entirely, but enough. Enough that Daniel's face darkened. The birthday song was awkward. My hands shook while I blew out the candles. The lemon cake tasted like sugar and humiliation, but I ate 3 bites because Emily had made it with love. Daniel left early. Rachel gathered the girls, quickly whispering sharp instructions under her breath. Olivia hugged me at the door, her little arms tight around my waist. I'm sorry, Grandma, she whispered. For what, baby? She looked toward the driveway where Daniel was putting Sophie into the car. Her voice dropped so low I almost missed it. Daddy said we have to get the house before you change your mind. My whole body went cold. I knelt slowly, ignoring the ache in my hip. Olivia, I whispered, when did he say that? Her eyes filled with fear. On the phone. He said it to somebody. He said if Aunt Emily keeps poking around, everything could get messy. Before I could ask more, Rachel called sharply. Olivia. Now! The child pulled away and ran to the car. I stood in the doorway while Daniel backed out of my driveway. He did not wave. Emily came up beside me. What did she say? Before I could ask more, Rachel called sharply. Olivia. Now. The child pulled away and ran to the car. I stood in the doorway while Daniel backed out of my driveway. He did not wave. Emily came up beside me. What did she say? I looked at my daughter, at the last person in that house who still saw me as whole. He said he had to get the house before I changed my mind. Emily closed her eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Inside, the birthday candles still smoked on the cake. The dining room chairs were pushed back at odd angles. William's chair stood at the head of the table, empty again. But now I understood something I had been too afraid to name. Daniel was not preparing to help me. He was preparing to erase me. 3 days after my birthday, I learned what it felt like to stand outside your own front door, and realize the house no longer recognized you. It was Wednesday morning, gray and damp. The kind of Ohio morning that made every bone remember winter, even though spring had already come. I had an eye appointment downtown, nothing serious, just a routine check because the words in my books had started blurring by evening. Daniel insisted on driving me. "I can drive myself," I told him when he called the night before. "I know you can," he said, "but the parking garage is confusing and your pupils might be dilated." They said they probably won't dilate them. Probably isn't good enough. I almost argued, but I was tired. Tired of defending every ordinary thing I had done for decades. Tired of proving I could open mail pay bills, cook dinner, remember appointments, and walk through my own life without supervision. So I let him drive. At the clinic, he sat beside me in the waiting room answering emails on his phone. When the nurse called my name, he stood too. "I can go in alone," I said. He smiled at the nurse. "She sometimes forgets what the doctor says." The nurse looked at me gently. I hated that look. "I do not," I said. Daniel gave a little laugh as if I were being stubborn in an adorable way. "Mom." That one word carried a warning. I went quiet. The appointment took 40 minutes. My eyes were fine. The doctor told me to use better reading light and gave me a new prescription for glasses. Nothing dramatic. Nothing Daniel could turn into a crisis. Still in the car, afterward, he seemed distracted. "You're quiet," I said. "Just thinking. About what?" "About what's best." That phrase made my stomach tighten. For whom, I asked. He glanced at me. "For everyone." We drove the rest of the way in silence. When we turned onto my street, I noticed something strange before we even reached the driveway. There was a white van parked near my curb. Not a delivery van, a service van. A man in a gray jacket stood by my porch, holding a small black case. "What's going on?" I asked. Daniel did not answer. He pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. "Daniel, it's just a safety update." I opened the car door before he could explain further. The man on the porch turned when he saw us. Mr. Ashford Daniel stepped out quickly. "Yes, all done." "Yes, sir. New code is active. Old keypad entry disabled. I also changed the rear lock like you requested." For a moment, the world became very clear. The wet sidewalk, the bare branches, the smell of rain, the little black mailbox with Ashford still painted on the side in William's fading white letters. I looked at my front door. My door. "You changed my locks?" I asked. Daniel's face tightened. "Mom, don't do this in front of the technician." "Did you change my locks?" The man shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I was told." "You were told by whom Daniel took my elbow." I pulled away. "Do not touch me." The technician looked from Daniel to me, then closed his case. "Invoice will be emailed, Mr. Ashford." "Thank you," Daniel said. I watched the man leave, carrying away the last version of my door I could open. Then I walked up the porch steps and entered the old code. The keypad flashed red. I entered it again. Red. My hands began to shake. "Open the door," I said. Daniel came up behind me. "Mom, listen. Open it." "I will, but we need to talk first." "No. You open my door, and then we talk inside my house." His voice lowered. "That is what I'm trying to explain." I turned around slowly. He looked tired, not guilty, tired, as if I were the burden in this scene. "You're going to stay somewhere safer for a few weeks," he said. The porch tilted beneath me. "What?" "I found a very nice senior apartment community in Worthington. It's temporary." "No, it has elevator staff meals available transportation. Mom, your home needs work." The locks were outdated. The stairs are steep. The kitchen is unsafe. You've had confusion with bills and documents. I have had confusion because you created it. His mouth hardened. This is exactly why we need a cooling off period. A cooling off period, I repeated. I am not a lawsuit. I am your mother. For the first time that morning, he lost his polished calm. And I am the one trying to keep you from hurting yourself. The shout echoed across the damp yard. A curtain moved in Mr. Wallace's front window. Daniel noticed too. He immediately softened his voice. "Mama," he said, "please don't make this uglier than it has to be." Something inside me broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the quiet finality of a thread snapping. "You already made it ugly when you locked me out." He looked away. I reached for my purse. "Give me the code. I can't do that right now." "Then I'm calling the police." His eyes came back to mine. "And tell them what? That my son locked me out of my home. And when they ask whose name is on the legal paperwork, the words hung there, cold, heavy, final." I stared at him. "What did you do?" I whispered. He did not answer. He did not need to. For a second, I saw the whole road behind me. The papers, the signatures, the missing mail, the insurance notice, the empty county envelope, the birthday speech. None of them were separate anymore. They were steps. Daniel had not slipped into betrayal by accident. He had walked there carefully. I stepped past him and went to the living room window. Through the glass, I could see the inside of my own home. The sofa, the lamp, William's recliner, my blue throw blanket folded over the arm. Everything was close enough to touch and impossibly far away. My knees weakened. Daniel reached for me again. "Mom, do not." My voice was so quiet, he stopped. A car pulled up behind us. "Emily." She got out so fast, she left her door open. "Mom!" I turned toward her, and the look on my face must have told her enough. She looked at the keypad, then at Daniel. "What did you the keypad?" Then at Daniel. "What did you do?" Daniel straightened. "Emily, this is not your concern. She is our mother, and I'm the one legally responsible for making sure she's safe." Emily's face went pale. "Legally responsible? How did Daniel straightened? Emily, this is not your concern. She is our mother, and I'm the one legally responsible for making sure she's safe." Emily's face went pale. "Legally responsible? How?" He did not answer. She stepped closer. "Daniel, what did you have her sign?" His jaw flexed. "You need to leave," he said. Emily laughed once, sharp and bitter. "No. You need to open that door. She's not staying here tonight." "You don't get to decide that." "I do if the property is under my management." There it was. Not love, not worry, not safety. Management. I looked at Emily. "He won't give me the code." Emily pulled out her phone. "Then I'm calling someone who will." Daniel's voice turned icy. "Be very careful." She stopped with the phone in her hand. For a moment, brother and sister looked at each other, and I saw years of childhood vanish between them. No shared Christmas mornings, no backyard games, no family photographs. Just a man guarding a locked door and a woman realizing her brother had become someone dangerous. Finally, Daniel said, "Mom's things have already been packed." My breath left my body. "What things?" "Clothes, medications, toiletries, a few personal items." "You went through my bedroom." "I had Rachel help." I closed my eyes. Rachel's hands in my drawers. Rachel touching William's side of the closet. Rachel deciding which pieces of my life counted as necessary. Emily stepped toward him. "You are sick." "No," Daniel said. "I am practical." He opened the back of his SUV and took out 2 suitcases I recognized. Mine. The brown one William and I had used on our anniversary trip to Savannah. The smaller blue one Emily had bought me after the zipper broke on my old bag. He set them on the porch like luggage outside a hotel. I stared at them. The humiliation was so complete, I could not even cry. Daniel handed me a folder. "The apartment is ready. I paid the first month. You'll be comfortable there while we sort everything out." I did not take it. Emily did. She opened it, scanned the first page, and her face changed. "What I asked." She looked at me, then at Daniel. He listed himself as emergency contact and financial representative. Daniel reached for the folder. "That is standard." Emily pulled it away. "And you told them she has cognitive decline." I told them the truth. "No," I said. Both of them turned to me. My voice shook, but it held. "No more truth from your mouth, Daniel. Not about me." For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not shame. Fear. Only for a second. Then it was gone. Emily took my arm gently. "Mom, you're coming with me?" Daniel blocked the porch steps. "She agreed to the placement. She agreed because you lied. You can't prove that." That sentence was the first honest thing he had said all morning. Emily looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Maybe not yet." She helped me down the steps. I did not look back until I reached her car. When I turned, Daniel was standing on my porch in front of my locked door with my suitcases beside him and William's mailbox behind him. For the first time in my life, I understood that a person could be homeless while their home stood right in front of them. Emily opened the passenger door. Before I got in, she reached into her tote bag and pulled out a thick envelope. "I didn't want to show you this until I was sure," she said. Inside were the photographs she had taken of Daniel's papers weeks earlier. Blurry, crooked, partial, but real. I held them in my lap as Emily drove away from my house. And somewhere beneath the grief, beneath the fear, beneath the shame of being locked out by the child I had once carried, a small, hard piece of determination began to form. Daniel had taken my key, but he had not taken the truth. Emily did not take me to the senior apartment Daniel had arranged. She took me to her house. It was a small ranch home on a quiet street in Westerville, with a maple tree in the front yard and children's bicycles scattered near the garage from the family next door. Nothing about it looked like rescue. It looked ordinary. Maybe that was why I started crying the moment we pulled into her driveway. Emily turned off the engine and sat beside me without speaking. That was one of the gifts she had always had. She did not rush pain. She did not fill silence just because it made her uncomfortable. I held the envelope of photographs in my lap. Blurry pictures of papers I had signed. Crooked images of paragraphs I could barely understand. A few partial signature lines. Some dates. Daniel's notes. My own initials on pages that now felt like traps. "I should have listened to you," I whispered. Emily's hands tightened around the steering wheel. "Mom, don't do that. I signed them. He manipulated you. I still signed." She turned toward me then. "Because he was your son. Because he used Dad's memory. Because he made everything sound like protection. That is not the same as consent." Consent. It was such a plain word, but it felt like a door opening in my chest. Daniel had spent weeks making me feel like a confused woman who forgot her own decisions. Emily was the first person to say what had happened to me was not confusion. It was deception. Inside her house, she made tea and gave me the guest room. She put my suitcases near the bed but did not open them. I appreciated that more than I could say. After Daniel and Rachel had gone through my bedroom, the idea of someone else touching my things made my skin crawl. That night, I did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel on my porch. My son, my baby, standing between me and the front door, as if I were a stranger asking for entry. At 3 a.m, I got out of bed and walked into Emily's kitchen. The house was dark, except for the light above the stove. I found her sitting at the table, with her laptop open, the photographs spread around her, like evidence in a crime show. She looked up, startled. "Mom, you should be sleeping." "So should you." She rubbed her eyes. "I keep trying to read these, but some parts are cut off." I sat across from her. On the screen was one of the pages she had photographed at my kitchen table weeks earlier. Emily had enlarged it until the words blurred. I recognized my initials near the bottom. My own handwriting looked like an accusation. "What can we do?" I asked. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We need a lawyer." I thought Daniel made himself the lawyer. "No, we need your lawyer." I almost laughed at the bitterness of it. I don't even know where to start. I do. The next morning, Emily called in sick to school. She made 3 phone calls, then a 4th. The first attorney said it sounded complicated and would require a retainer I could not afford without access to my own accounts. The second said they had a conflict because they knew Daniel professionally. The third offered an appointment 2 weeks out, as if I were not locked out of my own home. Then Emily went very still during the 4th call. "Yes," she said, sitting straighter. "My father was William Ashford." A pause. "Yes, sir. Martin Ashford is my mother." Another pause. Her eyes lifted to mine. "We can be there today." After she hung up, she said a name I had not heard in years, Thomas Green. For a moment, I was back at a summer barbecue 20 years earlier, watching William laugh with a tall man in suspenders who had brought terrible potato salad and wonderful stories. Thomas Green had practiced law in Columbus for decades before retiring. He and William had served together on the church finance committee. They had argued about baseball taxes and whether black coffee was a personality flaw. "I thought he retired," I said. "He did. But his niece runs the firm now. He said if it's William's family, he'll meet us." Thomas Green's office was in an older brick building downtown, the kind with narrow hallways, brass plaques, and wooden doors that looked like they had heard a century of secrets. Emily helped me out of the car, even though I did not need help, and for once I did not object. Thomas was older than I remembered. Thinner. His hair had gone white, and his hands trembled slightly when he reached for mine, but his eyes were sharp. Martin Ashford Thomas was older than I remembered. Thinner. His hair had gone white, and his hands trembled slightly when he reached for mine, but his eyes were sharp. "Martin Ashford," he said softly. "William talked about you like you hung the moon." That was all it took. I pressed a hand to my mouth, but the tears came anyway. Thomas did not look away. He simply waited, then handed me a box of tissues as if grief were a normal thing in his office. When I could speak, Emily told him everything. Not dramatically, not angrily, just clearly. The papers, the mail, the bank access, the doctor's appointment, Daniel's birthday speech, the changed locks, the senior apartment, the photographs. Thomas listened without interrupting. That alone felt like medicine. When Emily finished, he put on his glasses and began examining the photos. His niece, attorney Laura Benton, joined us halfway through. She was in her 40s with calm eyes and a yellow legal pad. She asked precise questions that made me nervous, but never made me feel foolish. Mrs. Ashford Martin, I corrected gently. She smiled. Martin. Did Daniel ever advise you in writing to seek independent counsel before signing no? Did he explain that his interests could conflict with yours? No. Did he tell you any document would transfer current ownership rights? I looked down. He said it would protect the house. Thomas muttered something under his breath. Laura looked at him. Uncle Tom. He removed his glasses. I'm old, not dead. I know undue influence when I smell it. For the first time in days, Emily almost smiled. Thomas tapped one of the photos. This looks like more than a simple power of attorney. Laura leaned closer. Possibly a quitclaim deed or transfer into a trust structure where Daniel controls the beneficial interest. My stomach twisted. What does that mean? It means, Laura said carefully, we need the recorded documents from the county. Not copies Daniel chooses to provide. Official records. Can we get them? Yes. I breathed for the first time in what felt like hours. But Thomas added documents alone may not be enough. If you sign them, Daniel will argue you understood and agreed. He already is, Emily said. Thomas nodded. Then we need to prove intent. His intent, not just the result. How do we prove what was in his mind, I asked. Thomas leaned back in his chair. People write things down when they think no one will ever see them. The room went quiet. Emily and I looked at each other. Thomas continued. Emails, text messages, notes, drafts, correspondence with title companies, brokers, insurance people, banks. If Daniel planned this before you signed, if he discussed strategy with someone, if he referred to your trust in him as a tool that could matter. My chest tightened. Emails. William had kept everything. I mean, everything. Old receipts, tax returns, church committee minutes, Christmas newsletters from people we barely remembered. He had once printed out a confirmation email for a toaster warranty and filed it under appliances. But after he died, I had not been able to open his laptop. It sat in a box in my basement, wrapped in an old towel, because touching it felt like knocking on a door he would never answer. I might have something, I said. Emily turned toward me. What? William's laptop? Thomas became very still. Did Daniel ever use it? Sometimes years ago. And William kept access to the old family email account. Daniel used to send things there when he wanted his father's opinion. Laura wrote quickly. Do you still have the password? I don't know. Thomas looked at me over his glasses. Martin, I need you to think carefully. Did William ever express concern about Daniel and money property control? I wanted to say no. I wanted to defend my son automatically the way mothers do, even when the evidence is bleeding in front of them. But then I remembered William sitting in his study one evening, rubbing his thumb along the edge of a coffee mug, saying, Daniel talks about inheritance like it's a schedule instead of a someday. At the time, I had scolded him. He's practical, I had said. William had only replied, practical men can still be dangerous if they think love entitles them to ownership. I swallowed. Yes, I whispered. Maybe he did. Thomas' face softened with sadness, not surprise. Then we start there. Laura explained the next steps: request county records, preserve any documents Emily had, avoid direct conversations with Daniel unless recorded through legal channels, and not sign anything else. She also told me to change passwords Daniel might have accessed, freeze certain accounts if possible, and document every interaction. It was overwhelming, but for the first time, the fear had shape, and anything with shape could be fought. As we stood to leave, Thomas reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph. It showed him and William at a church picnic, both younger, both laughing, both holding paper plates. Your husband was a good man, he said. Yes, I replied. He would be furious. A sad laugh escaped me. He would... Thomas handed me the photograph. Then let's make sure his house and his wife are not stolen in silence. On the drive back to Emily's house, I held that photograph against my chest. For 2 days, Daniel had made me feel homeless. But inside that car with Emily beside me and William's old friend willing to stand up for me, I felt something I had not felt since the keypad flashed red. I felt like I still existed. William's laptop was still in my basement inside a cardboard box labeled in his handwriting, "Desk, Personal." I had not touched that box since the week after his funeral. There are some griefs you clean around instead of cleaning through. I had dusted the shelf above it. I had moved Christmas decorations beside it. I had carried laundry past it hundreds of times. But I had never opened it because part of me believed that if I left William's things exactly where they were, I would not have to admit how completely he was gone. Emily came with me the next morning. Thomas had told us not to go back to my house without legal guidance, so we were careful. Emily called Laura Benton first. Laura said Daniel could not lawfully keep me from retrieving personal property, especially if I was accompanied and avoided confrontation. Still, she warned us to document everything. So Emily drove me to my own house like we were approaching a crime scene. My heart pounded the moment we turned onto the street. The house looked innocent in the morning light. My curtains were still in the windows. William's bird feeder still hung in the backyard. The porch steps were damp from overnight rain. But the keypad on the front door looked different now, small, black, silent, and cruel. Emily parked at the curb. "Stay in the car until I check," she said. "I am not hiding outside my own house." "You are not hiding. You are letting me make sure Daniel isn't here." She walked to the front window and looked in. Then she came back and shook her head. No car, no movement. I still had my old garage remote in my purse. I pressed it with a trembling thumb. For one awful second, nothing happened. Then the garage door rose. I nearly sobbed from relief. Inside, the air smelled like dust oil and old cardboard. William's tools still hung on the pegboard above the workbench. His handwriting was still on little strips of masking tape, screws, washers, picture hooks. "Don't throw away." That last label nearly broke me. Emily touched my shoulder. "Mom, I'm all right." I was not all right, but I kept walking. We went through the garage into the basement stairwell. I noticed immediately that someone had moved things. Boxes that had been stacked near the furnace were now pushed toward the wall. My Christmas wreaths were upside down. A plastic bin of old photo albums had been opened. Emily saw it too. "Rachel," she said under her breath. I said nothing. I could not bear the thought of Rachel's hands deciding which memories were valuable. The box labeled "Desk Personal" was still there, wedged behind an old fan and 2 bags of potting soil. Emily pulled it out carefully. Dust lifted into the air, and for a moment the basement smelled like paperwood and the past. Inside were notebooks, tax envelopes, old pens, a church directory, William's reading glasses, and the laptop wrapped in a faded towel. I picked up the glasses first. They were light in my hand. So ordinary. So unbearable. William had worn them low on his nose when he read the newspaper. He used to look over them at me and say, "Martin, the world has lost its common sense." I would tell him common sense had probably seen the headlines and run for cover. I pressed the glasses to my chest. Emily waited. When I was ready, she took the laptop and slid it into her bag. We did not stay longer than necessary. Every minute in that house felt borrowed. I wanted to touch everything, apologize to everything, promise everything I would come back. But Emily kept watching the driveway, and I knew she was right. Daniel could arrive at any moment and turn even this into proof of my instability. At Emily's kitchen table, we opened the laptop. The screen stayed black. "No," I whispered. Emily plugged in the charger. "Give it a minute. The little light near the side blinked orange. We waited like two people beside a hospital bed. Finally, the machine gave a tired hum, and the screen came to life. William's login photo appeared. It was a picture Emily had taken years ago at Lake Erie. William stood near the water in a windbreaker laughing because his hat had almost blown away. The sight of his face made the kitchen disappear. I touched the screen. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered. Emily looked down. The laptop asked for a password. I tried the obvious ones first. Our anniversary, his birthday, my birthday, the name of our old dog Pepper, the street we lived on when Daniel was born. Nothing worked. After the fifth attempt, Emily said, "We should stop before it locks us out." William wrote everything down. "Where? In his ridiculous places." Emily frowned. Ridiculous places. He never put passwords where normal people would. He said normal places were where thieves looked. That made her smile, despite everything. "That sounds like Dad." We searched the box again. Nothing in the notebooks. Nothing in the tax folders. Then I opened the church directory, and a folded index card slipped out. On it, in William's neat block letters, was written, "Bluebird, plus 1974, plus Martin." I laughed and cried at the same time. "What does that mean?" Emily asked. Bluebird was the name of the diner where he proposed. The password worked. The desktop opened slowly, icons appearing one by one. William's files were arranged with the precision of a man who thought chaos was a personal insult. Folders for taxes, insurance, church, family, house, medical, Daniel, Emily. There was a folder with my name on it. Martin. I could not open it at first. Emily's hand covered mine. "We don't have to." "Yes," I said. "We do." Inside were scanned documents, notes about my medications, copies of my driver's license, emergency contacts, and a file titled, "If Martin Needs Help." I opened it. It was not legal. It was not dramatic. It was William being William. Call Emily first. Martin hates being fussed over, so ask before doing. She understands more than she admits when people talk down to her. Do not let Daniel rush her with paperwork. He means well sometimes, but he likes control too much. I covered my mouth. Emily read it over my shoulder, tears running silently down her face. He knew, she whispered. Maybe not everything, but enough. We sat there for a long time before continuing. Then Emily opened William's email. The inbox loaded slowly, thousands of messages gathering from the old family account. There were hardware store receipts, church newsletters, Medicare updates messages from me, jokes forwarded by cousins, and years of correspondence with Daniel. At first, we found nothing useful, only ordinary family emails. Daniel asking William to review a speech. Daniel sending updates about law school. Daniel forwarding articles about retirement planning. Some of them made him sound like the son I had believed in. I almost told Emily to stop. Then she typed house into the search bar. Hundreds of results appeared. She narrowed it with Mom. Fewer. Then she typed sign. The screen refreshed. One email chain appeared near the top. From Daniel Ashford to William Ashford. Subject Mom and the house. The date was almost 2 years before William died. Emily looked at me. Do you want me to open it? From Daniel Ashford to William Ashford. Subject Mom and the house. The date was almost 2 years before William died. Emily looked at me. Do you want me to open it? I nodded, though my throat had closed. The first message was from Daniel. He had written that the house should be placed into a structure that avoided probate and gave him authority to act quickly if needed. William had replied politely but firmly that any arrangement must leave control with me while I was alive. Daniel responded, "Dad, you're being emotional. Mom doesn't understand these things, and if we wait until she's scared or confused, Emily will interfere." My hands turned cold. William's reply was short. "Your mother is not a child. Do not speak of her that way." I heard his voice in those words. Steady, protective, alive. Emily scrolled. The chain ended there, but Daniel had forwarded part of it months later to someone named Mark Ellison. The email address belonged to a real estate broker. My pulse quickened. Emily clicked. Daniel's message read, "My father is the obstacle for now. After he's gone, Mom will sign if I frame it as protecting the property. She trusts me more than anyone. The key is keeping Emily out of the room." The kitchen went silent. I felt the words enter me one at a time, each one finding a place to wound. "After he's gone. Mom will sign. She trusts me. Keeping Emily out." I stood too quickly, and the chair scraped against the floor. Emily rose with me. "Mom!" I walked to the sink because I thought I might be sick. The betrayal was no longer a feeling. It was no longer a suspicion. It was there, in black letters, on a glowing screen, written by my son's own hand. He had planned around William's death. He had counted on my grief. He had studied my love like a weakness. Emily printed the email immediately. Then she saved it to a flash drive. Then she took photos of the screen with her phone. Thomas had warned us to preserve everything without altering the original account. "There may be more," she said, her voice shaking. I turned from the sink. I do not know how I knew. Maybe because one lie always has relatives. Maybe because Daniel had been too careful for too long to leave only one trace. Emily searched Mark Ellison's name. More messages appeared. Some were about market values. Some mentioned renovation estimates. One included the phrase post-transfer options. Another referenced senior transition timing. But there was one email Emily did not open right away. She just stared at the subject line. Draft language for capacity concerns. It had been sent from Daniel's work account to Mark Ellison, copied to someone named Claire Bennett. Emily whispered, "Who is Claire?" I shook my head. "I don't know." She opened it. The message was short, but every word felt sharp enough to draw blood. Mark used softer language in writing. Nothing about taking the house. Say protecting Mom's interests and future family stability. If she questions anything later, we'll lean on the fall risk and memory concerns. She will sign anything if I tell her it protects what Dad built. I gripped the edge of the counter. Emily began crying openly now, but I could not cry. Not yet. I stared at the sentence that would later destroy him. She will sign anything if I tell her it protects what Dad built. There it was. The truth Daniel never intended me to see. Not hidden in a locked safe. Not buried in a courthouse file. Not whispered behind closed doors. Sitting inside my dead husband's old laptop, waiting patiently beneath years of dust. William had left me more than memories. He had left me a witness. The email did not make me feel victorious. People imagine that when you find proof, your pain suddenly turns into strength. They imagine your hands stop shaking, your heart steadies, and the whole world becomes clear. But that is not how it felt for me. It felt like reading my own betrayal with a date stamp. Emily printed the email 3 times. One copy went into a folder for Thomas Green. One copy went into a folder for Laura Benton. One copy she placed on the kitchen table in front of me, as if I needed to see it again to believe it was real. She will sign anything if I tell her it protects what Dad built. I read that sentence until the words stopped looking like words. Daniel had not said, "Mom trusts me, and I hope I can help her." He had not said, "I worry she might be overwhelmed." He had written it like a strategy. She will sign anything. Anything. That was how my son had described the love I gave him. Not as something sacred, as access. Emily paced beside the table phone in hand. We need to call Laura right now. I nodded, but I could not move. Mom, I heard you. She stopped pacing. Are you okay? I looked at the paper. No? The honesty surprised both of us. For so long, I had been trying to sound steady. I had tried to be dignified at my birthday table. I had tried not to fall apart on my own porch. I had tried to speak clearly in the lawyer's office so no one could mistake grief for confusion. But in Emily's kitchen, with William's laptop humming softly beside me, I was just a mother reading proof that her son had studied the best way to deceive her. No, I said again. I am not okay. Emily came around the table and wrapped her arms around me. I did not sob loudly. I simply leaned into my daughter and let the tears come with a quietness that frightened me. They came from somewhere deeper than humiliation, deeper than anger. They came from the place where a mother keeps the baby version of her child. Because the man who wrote that email had once held my hand crossing a parking lot. The man who wrote that email had once cried when his father left for a 3-day work trip. The man who wrote that email had once brought me a dandelion and said it was a flower because he loved me. How does a heart hold both versions? I still do not know. Emily called Laura while I sat there. She put the phone on speaker. Laura answered on the second ring. Emily, we found emails. The silence on the other end changed immediately. What kind of emails? Emily looked at me before answering. Daniel discussing Mom signing documents after Dad died. He says she would sign anything if he framed it as protecting the property. Laura's voice became very calm. Do not forward anything yet. Emily froze. Why? Because we need to preserve the original source and chain of custody. Is the laptop still on? Yes. Do not delete, move, rename, or alter anything. Take photographs of the screen showing the full email header if possible. Save copies to an external drive, but do not modify the account. I want a forensic technology consultant to image the laptop. For court, Emily asked. For court, for negotiation, and for any claim Daniel tries to make that the email is fabricated. Fabricated, of course. The moment she said it, I understood. Daniel would not simply surrender because we had truth. He would attack the truth. He would say the email was taken out of context. He would say William's account was compromised. He would say Emily planted it. He would say I was confused. A liar's second weapon is always making honesty look suspicious. Laura asked us to read the email aloud, including names, dates, and addresses. Emily did. Her voice shook on the sentence I could no longer bear to hear. When she finished, Laura exhaled softly. That is significant. Significant enough? I asked. Laura paused. Martin, I cannot promise outcomes, but this helps establish intent. It also directly contradicts any claim that Daniel merely acted out of concern for your well-being. What about the other names? Emily asked. Mark Ellison and Claire Bennett. We will identify them. Mark may be a real estate broker. Claire may be an assistant title contact paralegal or someone at Daniel's office. Do not contact them yourself. I almost laughed. The idea of me calling anyone in Daniel's orbit felt impossible. Laura continued. I am going to ask the county keep for certified copies of all recorded property documents. We will also send a preservation letter to Daniel and any involved parties. If he destroys communications after that, it can hurt him badly. Emily's eyes hardened. Good. Laura's voice softened. I know this is emotional, but from now on, everything must be careful. Daniel is an attorney. He knows how to perform innocence. Yes, I thought. He always had. After the call, Emily followed Laura's instructions. She photographed the email with the header expanded. She saved PDFs. She copied files onto a new flash drive. She wrote down every step, the time, the date, and who touched the laptop. I watched her work and thought of William. He would have known exactly what to do. He would have made coffee too strong, found 3 folders labeled everything, and told me not to worry while worrying enough for both of us. Instead, I sat in my daughter's kitchen, wrapped in a cardigan Daniel had bought me, while my daughter preserved evidence against my son. Late that afternoon, Thomas called. His voice was gentle but firm. Laura sent me a summary. Did she tell you the sentence? She did. I closed my eyes. I keep thinking maybe there is some other way to read it. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Martin, I have been a lawyer a long time. I have seen innocent misunderstandings. I have seen families make poor choices under stress. That sentence is not a misunderstanding. My fingers tightened around the phone. He knew what he was doing, Thomas said. Those words should have steadied me. Instead, they shattered the last small corner of denial I had been protecting. He knew, I repeated. Yes, he knew I trusted him. Yes, he knew William was gone, and I was vulnerable. Thomas's voice lowered. Yes. After the call ended, I went into the guest room and opened one of the suitcases Daniel had packed. My clothes were folded neatly. Too neatly. Rachel's work, I was sure. There were 3 nightgowns, 2 pairs of slacks, a sweater, undergarments, my toothbrush, my blood pressure medication, and a framed photo of William and me from our 30th anniversary. Nothing from my jewelry box. Nothing from my desk. Nothing from the drawer where I kept letters William had written me. Not my church shoes, not my good winter coat, not the quilt my mother made. Someone else had decided which pieces of my life were portable. I sat on the edge of the bed holding the anniversary photo. In it, William's arm was around me, and I was laughing at something just outside the camera's view. I looked younger, but more than that. I looked younger, but more than that. I cared, unworried. Like a woman who believed the people standing closest to her would never become threats. I spoke to the photo quietly. I'm sorry I let him get this far. Kitty, unworried. Like a woman who believed the people standing closest to her would never become threats. I spoke to the photo quietly. I'm sorry I let him get this far. The room did not answer, of course, but in my memory William's voice came back as clear as if he were sitting beside me. You didn't let him. You loved him. That was when I decided something. I could grieve Daniel and still fight him. I could remember the boy he had been and still hold the man accountable. I could be his mother without being his victim. The next morning, Laura called again. The county documents had come back. The transfer had been recorded. Daniel had used the papers I signed to move the house into a trust structure where he held controlling authority. My name still appeared in places just enough to make it look protective, but real power had shifted. He could argue he had authority to manage, restrict access, and make decisions for my benefit. For my benefit. Those words made me colder than any outright theft. At least a thief admits he wants what is yours. Daniel wanted to steal my house and be thanked for protecting me. Laura said we had grounds to file an action challenging the transfer. Fraud, undue influence, breach of fiduciary duty, possible elder financial exploitation. She said we could seek emergency relief regarding access to the home and preservation of property. The legal words washed over me like rain. Then she said the only sentence I truly needed. "We can fight this." I looked at Emily. She nodded, already crying. "Yes," I said into the phone. "Then we fight." That afternoon, Emily helped me change every password she could. Bank, email, medical portal, phone account, insurance. She contacted the bank and asked for additional security. Laura sent formal letters. Thomas prepared a statement for me, and William's laptop was placed carefully in the hands of a forensic consultant, a quiet man named Mr. Alvarez, who wore gloves when he handled it and treated it like it mattered. Before he took it, I touched the lid once. "Thank you," I whispered. Not to the machine, to William, to the husband who had seen more than I wanted to see, to the man who had kept records because he believed truth should never rely on memory alone. Daniel had built his lie with polished words, locked doors, and official-looking papers, but one email existed outside his control. One sentence, one moment of arrogance, one truth he never thought his mother would find. And for the first time since the day my own front door rejected me, I felt the lock inside my chest begin to turn. Filing a lawsuit against your own child is not something the heart understands easily. The mind can understand it. The law can name it. Attorneys can organize it into claims exhibits, timelines, and sworn statements. But a mother's heart keeps looking for another door. A softer door. A way to stop the bleeding without cutting deeper. For 3 nights after Laura said we could fight, I barely slept. Emily's guest room was quiet, but quiet had become dangerous. In the dark, I kept hearing Daniel at different ages. His 5-year-old voice asking me to check under the bed for monsters. His 13-year-old voice telling me he hated me because I would not let him go to a party. His 25-year-old voice calling to say he had passed the bar exam. His grown man's voice on my porch saying, "And when they ask whose name is on the legal paperwork," how could all of those voices belong to the same person? On Monday morning, Laura and Thomas came to Emily's house with a folder thick enough to make my stomach twist. Laura placed it on the table carefully. "This is the complaint," she said. I stared at it. Complaint sounded too small. It did not sound like betrayal. It did not sound like being locked out. It did not sound like seeing your son's plan written in an email. "What does it say?" I asked. Laura opened the folder. "We are asking the court to invalidate the property transfer based on fraud, undue influence, breach of fiduciary duty, and lack of informed consent. We are also requesting emergency relief, so Daniel cannot sell, mortgage, alter, or further restrict access to the house while the case is pending." Emily sat beside me close enough that our shoulders touched. Thomas leaned forward. "Martin, once this is filed, Daniel will be served. He will know you found something, the email." "Not all of it yet," Laura said. "We reference written communications, but we do not need to show every card immediately." I looked at her. Will he be angry? Thomas's eyes softened. "Yes." The simple answer was almost comforting. Laura added, "He may also try to contact you directly. Do not answer. He may sound apologetic, loving, panicked, or furious. Do not engage. Every communication goes through counsel." I nodded, but the word loving stayed with me, because that was what scared me most. Not Daniel's anger, his tenderness, his ability to make me feel cruel for protecting myself. Laura handed me a pen. "We cannot file without your authorization." The pen felt heavier than it should have. Emily did not speak. She knew this choice had to be mine. I looked at my signature line and thought of every other paper Daniel had placed in front of me. I thought of how I had signed because I trusted him, because I was tired, because I believed love did not need a second opinion. This time, I read the page, every word. Then I signed. Not as Daniel's mother, as Martin Ashford. The lawsuit was filed that afternoon. Daniel called at 5:42 p.m. I did not answer. He called again at 5:44, then 5:49. Then a text arrived. Mom, I don't know what Emily and that old lawyer are telling you, but this is a mistake. Call me before this gets worse. Emily read it, then placed my phone face down on the table. At 6:13, Rachel called. At 6:25, Cousin Ruth called. At 7:02, my nephew Stephen sent a message. Aunt Martin Daniel says Emily is pushing you into suing him. Is that true? By 8 o'clock, the family had begun dividing like a cracked window. Some people said nothing. Some sent careful messages asking if I was okay. Others wrote things that felt like little knives wrapped in concern. Are you sure you understand what you're doing? Daniel has always taken care of you. No mother should drag her son into court. Maybe this should stay private. Private. That word made me laugh bitterly. People always want abuse to stay private when truth makes them uncomfortable. The next day, Daniel filed his response. Laura read it to us in her office because she did not want me seeing it alone. Daniel denied everything. He claimed I had voluntarily transferred control of the property as part of a thoughtful estate plan. He claimed I had expressed repeated concerns about living alone. He claimed Emily had become resentful over inheritance issues and was manipulating me. He claimed Thomas was too old and emotionally connected to William to be objective. Then came the part that made my hands go numb. Daniel alleged that I had shown signs of cognitive decline. He said I forgot conversations, misplaced bills, became paranoid about routine financial management, became hostile when offered help, demonstrated confusion about signed documents. I listened until I could not breathe. Laura stopped reading. Do you need a minute? No, I said, though I did. Keep going. Daniel had attached statements from relatives. Ruth said Daniel had expressed concern at my birthday party. Stephen said I seemed emotional and suspicious. Rachel wrote that I had become increasingly resistant to safety planning. Even the manager at the senior apartment submitted a note saying Daniel had represented himself as my financial contact and said the placement was being arranged with family agreement. Family agreement. There had been no family agreement. There had been Daniel's plan and everyone else's silence. Emily stood up so quickly her chair scraped the floor. Hez making her look unstable because she objected to being robbed. There had been Daniel's plan and everyone else's silence. Emily stood up so quickly her chair scraped the floor. He's making her look unstable because she objected to being robbed. Laura's voice stayed calm. That is his strategy. Thomas removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. It's an old one. What as I asked? Make the victim's reaction look like the problem? I looked down at my hands. They were wrinkled, spotted. The hands of a woman who had cooked thousands of meals, signed school forms, held feverish children. Folded funeral programs, planted tulips, and written checks for law school books. Now my own son wanted a judge to see those hands and think unreliable. I left Laura's office that day with a new kind of anger. Not loud anger, clean anger. The kind that stands up straight. Daniel's side moved quickly. He hired a polished attorney named Gregory Miles, a man with silver hair, expensive shoes, and the professional warmth of a locked bank vault. Gregory requested medical records, bank records, deposition dates. He also requested that I submit to a cognitive evaluation. Emily nearly exploded when Laura told us. No, she said. Absolutely not. Laura looked at me. We can object to the way they framed it, but refusing entirely could be used against us. We may agree to an independent evaluation by a neutral doctor. I'll do it, I said. Emily turned to me. Mom, I am not afraid of my mind. That was not completely true. I was afraid of many things. I was afraid I would stumble over a question because I was nervous. I was afraid my grief would make me cry, and they would call it instability. I was afraid the world would rather believe a confident lawyer than an older woman with shaking hands. But I was more afraid of letting Daniel define me. The evaluation took place 2 weeks later. The doctor was kind, but I hated every minute. Remember these words. Draw this clock. Count backward. Tell me the date. Repeat this sentence. Explain this proverb. I wanted to shout that I was not a worksheet. I was a woman whose son had locked her out of her house. But I answered, carefully, clearly. When the report came back, Laura smiled for the first time in days. No dementia, no significant cognitive impairment, mild anxiety consistent with situational stress. Emily cried. I did not. I simply closed my eyes and whispered, thank you. Daniel's attorney then shifted tactics. If I was not incompetent, then I had been influenced by Emily. If Emily had not influenced me, then I had misunderstood. If I had not misunderstood, then the documents were still technically valid. Every path led to the same destination, Daniel keeping control. But Laura and Thomas were building their own path. The forensic consultant confirmed the email had come from Daniel's work account. The metadata matched. The timestamps were intact. The chain included Mark Ellison and Claire Bennett, who turned out to be Daniel's former legal assistant. Laura located Claire. At first, Claire refused to speak. Then she received a subpoena. That changed things. One rainy afternoon, Laura called and said, Claire Bennett remembers the email? I gripped the phone. She does. She also remembers Daniel asking her to prepare draft language regarding your supposed memory issues before your kitchen slip ever happened. Emily covered her mouth. Before the fall, before the doctor, before the birthday speech, before all of it. Daniel had not reacted to concern. He had manufactured concern to fit the theft. That night, I sat alone in Emily's guest room with William's anniversary photo in my lap. For the first time, I let myself imagine the courtroom. Daniel sitting across from me. His suit perfect. His face composed. His mouth ready to tell the judge I had wanted all of this. And somewhere inside me, the mother who still remembered his dandelion had to make room for the woman who knew the truth. My son was not just fighting for a house. He was fighting for the right to rewrite my mind. And I had signed one final document in my heart. I would not let him. The first time I saw Daniel in court, he looked exactly like the son I used to be proud of. That was the cruelest part. He wore a dark charcoal suit, a white shirt, and the blue tie I had given him the Christmas after he opened his own law office. His hair was neatly combed. His shoes were polished. He stood beside Gregory Miles with his shoulders back and his hands folded in front of him, calm as a man attending a business meeting. For one terrible second, my heart forgot why we were there. It saw my boy. Then he looked at me, not with love, not with sorrow, with assessment, as if I were a witness he needed to manage. Emily sat on my left. Thomas sat behind us because Laura was the attorney of record and would be speaking for me. He had insisted on coming anyway, despite the ache in his knees. William would haunt me if I stayed home, he had said. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. No dramatic high ceilings, no roaring crowd. Just wooden benches, fluorescent lights, a flag in the corner, and a judge with silver hair who looked tired before anyone spoke. But to me, it felt like the center of the world, because in that room, my life had been reduced to a question. Was I a woman who had been deceived, or an old mother who forgot what she willingly gave away? Laura placed her hand lightly over mine. Breathe. I am. You're holding your breath. I let air out slowly. The hearing began with arguments. Legal language filled the room like fog. Trust instruments, fiduciary capacity, temporary injunction, preservation of assets, possession of residence, undue influence, financial exploitation, competency. I listened carefully because I refused to let anyone say later that I did not understand. Gregory Miles spoke first for Daniel. His voice was smooth and respectful, which almost made it worse. Your Honor, this is a painful family dispute, but not every painful family dispute is fraud. Mrs. Ashford voluntarily executed estate planning documents prepared to protect a family asset. My client, her son, acted at her request and out of concern for her safety. Mrs. Ashford. Her son. Family asset. Concern. He made every ugly thing sound clean. Gregory continued. The plaintiff is now under the influence of her daughter Emily Carter and a retired family friend with emotional ties to the late Mr. Ashford. Since being removed from a potentially unsafe living situation, she has reversed course, apparently forgetting prior conversations and agreements. Emily's jaw tightened. Laura stood slowly. Your Honor, my client was not removed from an unsafe living situation. She was locked out of her own home after signing documents she was told would protect the property, not transfer control of it to her son. Daniel did not move. Laura's voice stayed calm. We have medical evidence showing no cognitive impairment. We have a timeline showing Mr. Ashford began creating a narrative of incapacity only after initiating the transfer process. And we have communications suggesting this plan was not protective, but strategic. Gregory rose. We object to vague references to alleged communications not yet properly authenticated. Laura looked at him. They are being authenticated. The judge raised a hand. We'll get there. My stomach turned. We'll get there. I knew what that meant. The email was not fully in play yet. Not today. Not in the way my heart wanted it to be. Today was about temporary relief, about whether Daniel could keep control while the larger case moved forward. Then Gregory asked to call Daniel. My son stood. He walked to the witness stand with the same confidence he had carried across graduation stages and church halls and my front porch. He raised his right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do, Daniel said. The words went through me like ice. The truth. He sat, adjusted his jacket, and looked at Gregory. Gregory began gently. Mr. Ashford, can you describe your relationship with your mother before this dispute? Daniel glanced toward me. We were close, he said. Very close. After my father passed, I helped her with Bill's repairs appointments. I was there every week. His voice trembled slightly. A perfect tremble. Gregory nodded. Why did you become involved in her estate planning? Because she asked me to help protect the house. She was worried about probate taxes and what might happen if she became ill. I stared at him. I had not asked in the way he meant it. He had brought me the fear, then offered himself as the cure. Gregory continued. Did your mother understand what she was signing? Yes. Did you force her? No. Did you pressure her? Absolutely not. Did she know the documents gave you authority regarding the property? Daniel lowered his eyes briefly, then looked back up. Yes. I explained it to her carefully. My hands clenched in my lap. Emily whispered, Don't react. I tried. Gregory walked him through the story piece by piece. Daniel said I had become overwhelmed by paperwork. Daniel said I forgot passwords. Daniel said I left mail unopened. Daniel said the stove incident frightened him. Daniel said the birthday conversation was painful but necessary. Daniel said changing the locks was temporary and intended to prevent confusion while repairs were arranged. Every lie carried a small piece of truth inside it. That was what made him dangerous. Yes, I had been overwhelmed. Yes, I had forgotten a password after he changed it. Yes, I had left some mail unopened because less mail was coming to me. Yes, I had slipped in the kitchen. But Daniel arranged those facts like furniture in a room where he wanted the judge to see only one path. Then Gregory asked, Did your mother ever object to your managing the property before Emily became involved? Daniel sighed. Not seriously. She would get anxious sometimes, but she always calmed down when I explained. After Emily got involved, everything changed. Emily's eyes filled with fury. Gregory turned slightly. What changed? Daniel looked at me again. This time he let sadness cover his face. My mother became afraid of me. For a second, the courtroom disappeared. Because that part was true. I was afraid of him. But not because Emily poisoned me. Not because age had made me suspicious. I was afraid because the child I trusted had learned how to use my trust against me. Gregory's final question came softly. Mr. Ashford, did you ever intend to take your mother's home away from her? Daniel placed a hand over his chest. No, never. Everything I did was to protect her and preserve what my father built. I felt Laura shift beside me. Then it was her turn. She stood with a folder in one hand and walked toward the lectern. Mr. Ashford, she said, you are an attorney, correct? Yes, you understand fiduciary duty. Of course. You understand conflict of interest? Yes. She stood with a folder in one hand and walked toward the lectern. Mr. Ashford, she said, you are an attorney, correct? Yes, you understand fiduciary duty. Of course. You understand conflict of interest? Yes. You understand the difference between a client making an informed decision and a family member signing documents based on trust. Gregory stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Laura nodded. Let me ask it differently. Did you advise your mother in writing to seek independent legal counsel before signing documents that gave you authority over her home? Laura nodded. Let me ask it differently. Did you advise your mother in writing to seek independent legal counsel before signing documents that gave you authority over her home? Daniel hesitated. No. Did you explain to her in writing that your interests could conflict with hers? No. But there was no conflict. Laura looked down at her notes. No conflict between a mother who wanted to remain in her home and a son who later changed her locks. Gregory objected again. The judge allowed Daniel to answer. Daniel's jaw tightened. The locks were changed for safety. Safety from whom? From risk. What risk required preventing your mother from entering the house where her medications, personal papers, and belongings were kept? I had packed her essentials. Laura looked up sharply. You had packed what you decided were her essentials. Daniel did not answer. Laura continued. Your wife helped pack them. Yes. Without your mother present. Yes. Without her permission, Daniel's voice hardened. It was an emergency situation. What emergency occurred that morning? He paused. My mother was not safe alone. Because of a medical diagnosis? No. Because Dr. Patel declared her incompetent? No. Because a neutral professional advised immediate removal? No. Laura let the silence sit. Then she asked Mr. Ashford, when did you first begin preparing written notes regarding your mother's alleged memory problems? Daniel's eyes flickered. I don't recall. You don't recall, no. Would it surprise you to learn that your former assistant recalls draft language about your mother's capacity concerns before the kitchen slip you described? Daniel's eyes flickered. I don't recall. You don't recall? No. Would it surprise you to learn that your former assistant recalls draft language about your mother's capacity concerns before the kitchen slip you described? Gregory stood so quickly his chair moved. Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. Laura turned calmly. We will present the witness at the appropriate time. The judge looked at Laura. Move on for now. But I had seen Daniel's face, just for a second. The Polish cracked. Laura returned to the table without mentioning the email. Not yet. I wanted her to say it. I wanted her to read the sentence aloud right then. She will sign anything. I wanted the judge to hear it, Gregory to choke on it, Daniel to feel the courtroom turn. But Laura had warned me. Justice was not a shout. It was a structure. The hearing ended with the judge ordering that Daniel could not sell, mortgage, or alter the property while the case continued. He also ordered supervised access so I could retrieve personal belongings and documents. It was not everything. It was not home restored. Not yet. But it was the first time Daniel had not gotten everything he wanted. As we stood to leave, Daniel approached. Laura stepped slightly in front of me. He looked past her. "Mom!" I did not answer. His face softened in that old familiar way. "Please don't let them do this to us." For one heartbeat, I almost broke. Then I remembered the witness stand. His raised hand. His calm voice. His oath. I looked directly at him. "You did this to us, Daniel." His expression changed. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. For the first time, he understood that the mother who once signed because she trusted him was gone, and the woman standing in her place was ready to tell the truth. The email was read aloud on the 4th day of trial. By then, I had learned that courtrooms do not move like justice in movies. They move slowly, carefully, sometimes painfully. Truth does not burst through the doors with music behind it. It waits its turn while lawyers argue over foundations, objections, relevance, authentication, and procedure. But when truth finally speaks, even a quiet room can feel like thunder. Claire Bennett testified before the email was shown. She looked nervous when she entered the courtroom. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun and a gray blazer buttoned all the way up. She did not look like someone who wanted to destroy Daniel. She looked like someone who had spent weeks hoping the truth would somehow not require her name. Laura approached her gently. "Ms. Bennett, were you employed by Daniel Ashford?" "Yes. In what capacity? I was his legal assistant for about 4 years. During that time, did Mr. Ashford ever discuss his mother, Martin Ashford, with you?" Claire glanced toward Daniel. He stared straight ahead. "Yes," she said. "Did he ask you to prepare any documents or notes relating to Mrs. Ashford's memory, safety, or capacity?" Gregory stood. "Objection. Leading." "Sustained," the judge said. Laura nodded. "Ms. Bennett, what kinds of tasks did Mr. Ashford assign you regarding his mother?" Claire swallowed. "He asked me to draft language about her needing assistance, about concerns with living alone. Things like fall risk confusion with paperwork, resistance to help." Laura paused. "When did he ask you to prepare that language?" Claire looked down at her hands. "Before the fall, he later talked about." The courtroom became very still. Laura let the silence breathe. "Before Mrs. Ashford slipped in her kitchen?" "Yes, before the birthday dinner where he raised concerns publicly." "Yes, before he changed the locks." "Yes." I heard Emily inhale beside me. Laura continued. "At the time he asked you to draft that language, had you ever personally witnessed Mrs. Ashford show confusion or cognitive impairment?" "No." "Did Mr. Ashford ever tell you a doctor had diagnosed her with cognitive impairment?" "No." "Did he explain why he wanted that language prepared?" Claire's mouth tightened. "He said it was better to have a record in case she pushed back later." My body went cold. In case she pushed back. Not in case I needed help. In case I resisted. Laura then turned to the email. "Ms. Bennett, I'm going to show you what has been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 27. Do you recognize this email chain?" Gregory stood again. "Objection, Your Honor. Authentication and relevance," Laura replied calmly. "Your Honor, the forensic report has already established the metadata originating account timestamps and chain integrity. Ms. Bennett is copied on the message and can testify as to receipt." The judge looked at Gregory. "Overruled for now. You may continue." Laura handed Claire a printed copy. Claire looked at it for less than 5 seconds. Yes, she said quietly. I recognize it. Did you receive this email? Yes. From whom? Daniel Ashford. Was it sent from his work account? Yes. Did you alter it? No. Did you understand the subject matter at the time? Claire hesitated. Not fully. I knew it involved his mother's house. I knew he was trying to frame certain language carefully. Laura walked back to her table and picked up another copy. Your Honor, may I read the relevant portion? Gregory objected again, but this time his voice was tighter. The judge allowed it. Laura stood in the center of the courtroom. I looked at Daniel. For the first time since the trial began, he would not look at me. Laura read Mark use softer language in W writing. Nothing about taking the house. I looked at Daniel. For the first time since the trial began, he would not look at me. Laura read Mark use softer language in writing. Nothing about taking the house. Say, protecting Mom's interests and future family stability. If she questions anything later, we'll lean on the fall risk and memory concerns. She will sign anything if I tell her it protects what Dad built. The words did not sound the same in Laura's voice. At Emily's kitchen table, they had sounded like a wound. In court, they sounded like a verdict beginning to form. No one moved. Not Rachel, who sat behind Daniel with her hands clenched around her purse. Not Ruth, who had come that day and now looked as if she wished she had stayed home. Not Gregory Miles, whose jaw had gone rigid. Not Daniel. Laura lowered the paper. Ms. Bennett, did Mr. Ashford ever tell you this email was inaccurate? No. Did he ever claim someone else wrote it? No. Did he ever ask you to delete communications related to his mother? Gregory shot up. Objection. Laura looked at the judge. Your Honor, this goes to consciousness of wrongdoing. Did he ever ask you to delete communications related to his mother? Gregory shot up. Objection. Laura looked at the judge. Your Honor, this goes to consciousness of wrongdoing. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. I'll allow a limited answer. Claire's voice dropped. After the lawsuit was filed, he asked if I still had old emails. He said some family matters were being taken out of context. Did he ask you to delete them? Claire looked at Daniel again. Yes. A murmur passed through the courtroom. The judge struck his gavel once. Quiet. Daniel's face had gone pale, but he still tried to sit like a man in control. I knew that posture. I had seen it when he was a child, pretending he had not broken a lamp. I had seen it when he was a teenager, explaining why his report card was late. I had once thought his composure was confidence. Now I saw it for what it was. Practice. Gregory cross-examined Claire hard. He suggested she was bitter because Daniel had let her go. He suggested she misunderstood. He suggested the email referred to ordinary estate planning language. He suggested taking the house was simply a careless phrase from a broker, not Daniel's intent. Claire's hands shook, but she did not collapse. No, she said. That is not how I understood it. Gregory leaned closer. You are not an attorney, correct? No, so you cannot interpret legal strategy. I can read English. A few people shifted in the benches. The judge looked up sharply, but even he seemed to hide the smallest reaction. When Claire stepped down, she did not look at Daniel again. Then Mr. Alvarez, the forensic consultant, testified. Calmly, technically without emotion, he explained that the email metadata matched the server's timestamps, accounts, and message chain. He explained that the laptop image had been preserved. He explained that there was no sign the email had been fabricated or altered. Gregory tried to make the process sound confusing. Mr. Alvarez made it sound boring. That helped more than drama ever could. Finally, Laura recalled Daniel. This time when he took the stand, the room felt different. The first time he had walked up like a successful attorney defending a painful but noble choice. Now he walked like a man approaching a locked room where someone else held the key. Laura did not raise her voice. Mr. Ashford, earlier in these proceedings, you testified under oath that you never intended to take your mother's home away from her. Is that correct? Yes. You testified that everything you did was to protect her. Yes. You testified that concerns about her memory and safety came from real events. Yes. Laura picked up the email. Then why did you write before those events were documented that if your mother questioned things later, you would lean on fall risk and memory concerns? Daniel's mouth opened. No words came out. Gregory stood. Objection. Mischaracterizes. The judge cut him off. Overruled. The witness may answer. Daniel cleared his throat. That email is being taken out of context. Laura nodded. What is the context? I was discussing hypothetical planning issues. Hypothetical taking of your mother's house? No. Hypothetical use of her trust? No. Laura stepped closer. Did you write, she will sign anything if I tell her it protects what Dad built? Daniel's eyes flicked toward me. For 1 second, I saw panic. Then he looked away. Yes, he said. The word was barely audible. Laura's voice stayed steady. Was that statement true? Daniel swallowed. I believed my mother trusted me. That was not my question. Was it true that she would sign because you told her it protected what your father built? He did not answer. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Ashford, answer the question. Daniel's hands tightened on the edge of the witness stand. Yes, he said. The courtroom disappeared around me. I did not feel triumph. I felt the final weight of truth. My son had admitted it, not all of it, not with remorse, not with full honesty, but enough. Enough for the lie to stop standing upright. Laura then showed the earlier email to William, the one where Daniel had written that William was the obstacle and that after he was gone I would sign if Daniel framed it correctly. The judge read it silently. His face did not change, but the air did. Daniel tried to explain again. He said he had been frustrated. He said he had used poor wording. He said he loved me. That last one hurt the most. Because maybe in some twisted chamber of his heart, he believed he did. But love that requires erasing someone's will is not love. It is ownership. When Daniel stepped down, he looked smaller. Not because the room had defeated him, but because the version of him he had performed for the world could no longer cover the truth beneath it. Emily reached for my hand. I held on. Across the aisle, Ruth was crying silently. Rachel stared at the floor. Gregory whispered urgently to Daniel, but Daniel did not seem to hear him. I looked toward the judge, then toward the email resting on Laura's table. One email, one sentence, one careless moment where Daniel had trusted his own arrogance more than his mother's dignity. He had lied under oath. But the truth had kept a copy. Justice did not arrive with applause. It arrived on a Thursday morning in a quiet courtroom through the tired voice of a judge reading from a stack of papers while my hands rested in my lap and my daughter held her breath beside me. The judge said the property transfer had been obtained under circumstances that showed fraud, undue influence, and a serious breach of trust. He said Daniel had used his legal knowledge, his family position, and my grief to secure authority I had not knowingly agreed to surrender. He said the emails demonstrated intent, not confusion. He said the capacity concerns Daniel relied upon were not supported by medical evidence and appeared to have been developed before any genuine incident could justify them. Then he said the words I had waited months to hear. The transfer is void. For a moment, I did not understand. Laura turned to me, her eyes soft. Martin, the house is yours. The house is yours. not Daniel's. Not managed by Daniel, not temporarily inaccessible for my safety. Mine. I closed my eyes, and the first face I saw was not Daniel's. It was William's. I saw him standing in the backyard in his old work jeans, wiping sweat from his forehead after fixing the fence. I saw him painting Ashford on the mailbox. I saw him carrying our children through the front door when they were small and sleepy after long car rides. We had not built wealth. We had built a life. And the court had finally said that life could not be stolen with paperwork and a son's polished lies. Daniel sat across the aisle with his head lowered. Gregory Miles looked grim. Rachel was not there that day. Ruth sat 2 benches behind us, crying silently. I did not know whether her tears were for me, for Daniel, or for the shame of having believed him too easily. The judge was not finished. He ordered Daniel to return all keys, access codes, financial records, personal documents, and property-related files. He prohibited him from contacting me directly without counsel. He referred portions of the testimony and evidence to the appropriate professional authorities for review, including Daniel's conduct as an attorney. Gregory stood. Your Honor, we would ask that the court not make any language suggesting criminal intent. The judge cut him off. Mr. Miles, I have made findings based on the record before me. What other bodies choose to do with that record is not for this court to decide today. Daniel flinched then. Not when the house was returned, not when the transfer was voided, but when his career, his reputation, his public image became endangered. That told me something I did not want to know. After the hearing, Daniel approached me in the hallway. Laura stepped forward immediately, but Daniel lifted both hands. I'm not trying to violate anything, he said. His voice sounded smaller than it had in court, smaller than it had on my porch, smaller than it had at my birthday table. He looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw not performance, but wreckage. Mom, he said, please. That one word still had power. I hated that it did. Emily moved closer to me, but I gently touched her arm. I needed to answer for myself. Daniel's eyes were red. I made mistakes. I looked at him carefully. Mistakes. Not choices. Not lies. Not betrayal. Mistakes. I felt sorrow rise in me, but anger stood beside it now. Stronger. Wiser. You did not misplace a document, Daniel, I said. You locked your mother out of her home. His face twisted. I thought I was doing what was best. No, I said. You thought you could make everyone believe that. He looked down. For one heartbeat, I thought he might finally say the truth. Not a partial truth. Not a lawyer's truth. A son's truth. I thought he might say, I wanted the house. I thought he might say, I used your trust. I thought he might say, I am sorry for what I did to you. Instead, he whispered, I'm going to lose everything. And there it was, still about him. I did not hate him in that moment. I almost wished I could. Hatred would have been simpler, but what I felt was sadder than hate. I felt the grief of seeing my child clearly, and realizing clarity did not bring him back to me. You did not lose everything I said. You risked everything for something that was never yours. His mouth trembled. Will you forgive me? The hallway seemed to go silent around us. People think forgiveness is a door you open when someone knocks hard enough. But sometimes forgiveness is a room you are not ready to enter. No is a room you are not ready to enter. No matter how loudly the person outside cries. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know this. You are not allowed to be near my home, my munwai, my records, or my decisions ever again. Matter how loudly the person outside cries. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know this. You are not allowed to be near my home, my money, my records, or my decisions ever again. His face collapsed. Mom. No, I said. You do not get to use that word as a key anymore. Emily began crying beside me. Daniel looked at her, then back at me. For once, he had no argument. Laura gently guided me away. That afternoon, we went to the house. Not inside yet. I was not ready. We simply parked across the street. The porch looked the same, but I did not. The woman who had stood there with suitcases and shame was gone. In her place sat someone bruised, older, sadder, but no longer willing to disappear. Mr. Wallace came out of his house slowly wearing his old brown jacket. I heard, he said. I nodded. He looked toward my front door. William would be proud. I pressed my lips together to keep from crying. No, I said softly. William would be furious first. Mr. Wallace smiled. That too. Emily laughed through tears. A locksmith came the next morning. Not Daniel's locksmith. Mine. He changed every lock, every code, every access point. When he handed me the new key, I held it so tightly the metal pressed into my palm. It was only a key, but it felt like my name being returned. Inside the house was not destroyed, but it had been disturbed. My drawers had been opened. Papers had been moved. William's study smelled faintly of Rachel's perfume. The blue throw blanket was gone from the sofa and folded in a closet as if someone had been preparing to stage the room for another life. I walked from room to room without speaking. In the bedroom, I found William's side of the closet half empty. Daniel had boxed some of his things without asking me. His old flannel shirts, his fishing vest, a stack of ties. I sat on the floor and pulled one shirt into my lap. That was when I finally broke. Not in court, not in the hallway, not when the judge gave me the house back. I broke on my bedroom floor holding my dead husband's shirt, crying for the home that had survived betrayal and for the family that had not. Emily sat beside me and wrapped her arms around me. We got it back, she whispered. I know, but getting back a house is not the same as getting back trust. That evening, Laura called to explain the next steps. Daniel would face review by the state bar. There could be sanctions. There could be criminal investigation. There could be settlement discussions about financial damages. I listened quietly. Then I said, I don't want revenge. Laura was silent for a moment. What do you want? I looked around my kitchen. My kitchen. The yellow tulips were gone, of course, but the vase still sat by the window. I want protection, I said. For myself, for Emily, for the house. And I want Daniel held accountable enough that he cannot do this to anyone else. That is not revenge, Laura said. That is justice. I looked toward William's study. For months, Daniel had tried to make me look confused, helpless, unstable, and afraid. But he had underestimated one thing. A woman who has lost nearly everything is not weak. She is dangerous to lies. Because once she stops being afraid of losing love, she becomes free to defend the truth. I moved back into my house on a Saturday morning, not because the court said I could, not because the locks had been changed, not because Daniel's name had been stripped of every authority he had taken. Those things mattered, but they were not enough. A house can be legally yours and still feel haunted by what happened inside it. I moved back when I was ready to hear the floorboards creak without flinching. Emily arrived at 8 with coffee cleaning supplies and a stubborn expression that reminded me so much of William. I almost smiled before crying. We are opening every window, she announced. It's 48 degrees outside. Then we'll wear sweaters. She marched through the house, lifting sashes, pulling back curtains, and letting sharp spring air rush into rooms that had felt closed for too long. Dust moved in the sunlight. The living room smelled like lemon cleaner old wood and something else I could not name. Maybe grief. Maybe relief. I stood in the doorway holding my new key. The brass was still bright. For months, I had imagined that walking back inside would feel like victory. Instead, it felt tender, like touching a bruise to see whether it still hurt. It did, but not as badly. Emily helped me return William's shirts to his closet. We unfolded each one, shook out the wrinkles, and hung them where they belonged. She asked if I wanted to donate some. I said not yet. She did not argue. That was the difference between help and control. Help asks, control decides. We cleaned William's study last. I had been avoiding it all morning. The room still held the deep smell of paper and cedar. His desk sat near the window, the same desk where Daniel had once asked for help with a college essay. The same desk where William had written notes warning me not to let Daniel rush me. Emily placed the framed photograph of William and Thomas back on the shelf. Then she set the old laptop case beside it. Mr. Alvarez had returned the laptop after making certified copies and completing his report. I did not want to use it. I did not even want to open it. But I did not want it hidden in the basement anymore either. Truth did not belong in a box. It belonged where it could be remembered. By noon, Mr. Wallace came over carrying peach preserves and a small toolbox. "I heard there was a housewarming," he said. Emily laughed. "It's not a housewarming." He looked around. "Feels like one." He fixed the loose hinge on the pantry door without being asked, though he did ask if he could touch it first. That small courtesy nearly made me cry. After months of people handling my life like I was already gone, permission felt like love. In the afternoon, we went to the backyard. William's garden had suffered. Weeds had taken over the flower beds. The rose bush leaned badly. The tulips I loved had bloomed and faded without me there to see them. I knelt in the dirt anyway. Emily protested immediately. "Mom, your knees! My knees have been through worse than weeds." She smiled and knelt beside me. We pulled crabgrass, trimmed dead stems, and planted new lavender along the fence. The soil was cold under my fingernails. The work made my back ache, but with every root I pulled, something inside me loosened. By evening, the house looked less like evidence and more like home. Then the letter came. Not by mail, not officially. Emily found it tucked under the edge of the front mat when she went out to gather the cleaning rags from the porch. Her face changed before she handed it to me. "It's from Daniel." My first instinct was fear. That made me angry. Even after everything, his name could still reach into my chest and tighten something. Laura had warned us not to engage directly, but a letter was already here. Emily offered to read it first. I shook my head. I sat at the kitchen table and opened it myself. "Mom, I don't know how to write this without sounding like I'm defending myself, so I won't try. I did terrible things. I told myself I was protecting the family, but I was protecting my own idea of what I deserved. I was angry after Dad died. I was angry that he trusted you more than me with the house. I was angry that Emily questioned me. I convinced myself I had earned control because I had become the person everyone came to for answers. Then I used that control against you. I lied. I hurt you. I humiliated you. I made your love for me into a tool. There is no excuse. I know I may lose my license. I know there may be other consequences. I am scared. But I also know you were scared because of me, and I hate myself for that. I am not asking you to forgive me today. I am asking you to believe that for the first time in a long time, I understand that I became someone Dad would not recognize. I am sorry. Daniel. I read it twice. Emily watched me carefully.
What do you think she asked?
I folded the letter slowly. I think it is the first thing he has written that sounds like a man, not a lawyer. Does that mean you forgive him? I looked toward the window. Outside, the lavender we planted trembled in the evening breeze. No, I said. It means I hope he keeps telling the truth when no one is rewarding him for it. That was all I could give, and it was more than I thought I had. The months that followed were not simple. Daniel did face professional discipline. His law license was suspended while the investigation continued. There were financial consequences, too. Some relatives apologized. Some disappeared. Ruth came by one afternoon with a casserole and tears, saying she should have believed me. I accepted the casserole. The apology took longer. Rachel never came back. Olivia sent me a drawing in the mail. It showed a yellow house, a garden, and 2 women holding hands under a big blue sky. On the back in uneven handwriting, she wrote, "I'm glad you are home, Grandma." I framed it, not because it was perfect art, because it reminded me that truth travels through generations, too. One afternoon, after meeting with Laura, I asked about starting a small fund. Nothing grand. I was not rich. I had a house, modest savings, and more scars than money. But I wanted to help older people get independent legal reviews before signing family documents. Laura connected me with the local senior advocacy center. Thomas helped me name it, the William Ashford Safe Signature Fund. The first time I spoke at the center, my hands shook so badly, I almost dropped my notes. A dozen older women sat in folding chairs. Some had daughters with them. Some had sons. Some came alone. I told them my story, not every detail, not every wound, but enough. I told them that love is not a legal strategy. I told them not to sign what they do not understand. I told them a good child will not be offended by a second opinion. I told them that being older does not mean surrendering the right to ask questions. Afterward, a woman with silver braids took my hand and whispered, "My nephew brought me papers last week." I squeezed her fingers. "Then we'll get them reviewed." That night I came home and sat in William's study. The sun was setting through the window, turning the room gold. His photo sat on the desk. The laptop rested on the shelf. The house was quiet, but not empty. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel like I was waiting for someone to take something from me. I felt present. Whole, maybe not. Healed, not completely. But home. Daniel and I did not become close again. Not in the way people might want for a neat ending. He wrote once a month. I answered when I was ready sometimes, with one paragraph, sometimes with one sentence. Boundaries became the fence around whatever love survived, and that was enough. Because I learned that healing does not always mean returning to the way things were. Sometimes healing means accepting that the old life is gone, then planting lavender anyway. I still keep the new key on a blue ribbon by the kitchen door. Every morning when I pass it, I touch it once. Not because I'm afraid, because I remember. I remember the courtroom, the email, the lie, the truth, the daughter who stood beside me, the husband who left me a witness, the house that waited for me, the woman I became when everyone expected me to fold. My son lied under oath. A single email destroyed his case, but the truth did more than save my house. It gave me back my voice.